know if you can hear us, if you can see us. There's a lot of us this time. Let us know. That would be swell, because I never trust YouTube or Twitch to backstab us when it has the opportunity.
As I'm in Scotland, I will open with good evening. And welcome to a stream that's going to be quite unlike any previous Lorebeards stream. Yes, if you can in the comments, double check that we can be heard out there. That would be lovely. But I would also like to say that you might note there is more than just 2 of us on screen. Or 3. Or 4. Or you get the bloody idea. There's loads of us, because we are here to discuss not just an individual topic that one person has been working on, but a mighty, huge fan project which has, trust me when I say, a lot to discuss over the course of this stream. We have, when I say we have an entire presentation, we literally have an entire presentation, which is going to be super, super cool. Discussing the hinterlands of Khuresh and how it could be expressed in Total War Warhammer. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, today's going to be really, really special. This is something that's kind of been lurking around in the background for a super long time, of something that I think we've been hoping to do. And the opportunity has finally presented itself. And the best part is, Andy and I had to do almost nothing. It was great.
It's free.
I've just got to add a little thing before we go, and that's that normally we do prep beforehand, prep. And at the end of last episode, Sotek said it's going to be the best because I don't need to do any prep next week, to which I admitted I don't really do much prep. I kind of just go and hope.
But yeah, this is going to be a really, really good time. This is an incredible group of people that I'm really, really excited for y'all to get to see what all they've been working up to. We're going to do our best to get through this in a somewhat organized, probably not, but we're trying method. And it's going to be a super great time. But you've probably seen some of their work if you're especially on the Total War subreddit. There's been a lot of posts over the last year plus.
2 years?
Yeah, 2 to 3 years of like little ideas they've been working on. They have a World Anvil site up as well, where I know I spent quite a bit of time when the project was kind of getting its way up and running. But we're going to kind of turn things over to them here in just a minute. I will note that for this episode, because there's so many of us and we have a big thing we're trying to get through. When it comes to the Super Chat stuff, we're going to be trying to get through them like really fast. Minimal sidetracking.
Minimal sidetracking. We all know that we here at Lorebeards never sidetrack. It'll be fine. It'll be easy.
Yeah, I'm probably
not a problem
lying,
in the slightest.
But, you know.
Yeah, I will say, if you haven't checked out their World Anvil, you should do so. The people at World Anvil, as you know already, if you know me, I love them tremendously. Janet over at World Anvil is literally the best person in the world. I'm going to be hosting the World Anvil Awards this year, along with Janet and Dimmy. And Lindsay, who you might know if you do LAWhammer, she's going to be there as well. So the 4 of us are going to be presenting the World Anvil Awards this year, assuming that none of us just keel over dead in the next 4 months. So that's going to be super, super cool if you want to know more about world building over on that side. As for how we're going to be doing this one, as Sotek says, we can't spend all of the time diverting like we normally do. So we're going to be relatively focused. We've got a lot to get through, but do not be afraid to drop in the chats. That's the point. That's what we do. We all talk about them. And if anyone down on all of this side has anything they want to discuss when chats come in, they're going to tell us and we're going to bring them up, and we are definitely going to be chatting them out. But we do have a lot of material to get through, because apparently building an entirely new faction for Warhammer takes a bit of time. And apparently if you build an entire faction from scratch and aren't, for example, like say Kislev, just reiterating other ideas that have come before and compounding them, going, how could I make this translate best into a computer game? You're not doing that. You're going from scratch with probably a couple of words that I can sum up with, yeah, there's Naga snake men there and stuff. There you go. That's the lore they've got to go with. And then taking that and turning it into something not just awesome, but awesome Warhammer, which is a very different prospect to just being awesome, because it's got its own tone, its own flavor. And I think you'll agree by the end of this stream that they kind of nailed it. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I think the best thing to start with is let's just kind of go down the line really fast and just, say who you are, give a brief introduction, just so everyone in chat can be like, oh, this person does X and has this little history thing. So I think we'll start with BloodRaven, just kind of work our way down the pyramid.
Hello. Solicitor, work on legal cases and stuff from Ireland. Not really Southeast Asian focused in any way, but I always like the concept of evil lizardmen and Southeast Asian culture all getting mashed in the wall, and I thought, oh, this looks great. So that'd be job one. Also, one of the writers, not as big as 47. 47 knows the stuff really, really well. But I just like to help out and all that. So, that's I can't really say very much else.
Great. Thank you. Let's move on to FuriousMing. Good sir.
Hello. Hey. I'm Koval, FuriousMing. I'm one of the concept artists for this project. You might have seen some of my previous work in the Cafe fan concept I posted a couple of years ago before Cafe was announced. So that was fun, and that's how I got into this whole rabbit hole of Warhammer stuff, basically. And yeah, I've just been doing concept and stuff ever since. And really enjoying it. My day job, I'm a visual effects artist. I do like muscle, hair, cloth simulation by day, and then at night I do concept art for fun. And it's been a privilege to be working with these amazing team. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. Rio, good to see you.
Yo,
welcome back to
Lorbeards. See you
Lorebeards.
again, man. Yeah,
In a different age.
Good to be back. Same name, haven't changed. So hey, all. My name's Ryu. I'm the other main concept artist for Khuresh Project. Before this, I also did a bunch of the cafe stuff, which we did discuss a little bit last time. I did a lot of the cafe concept art at the same time around when Kobo was doing it. His was great. We sort of did a little bit like different takes, but the same similar ideas. And that's how we ended up starting the project, right? I did those because I was in art school, and I was like, I gotta do some portfolio stuff. Might as well do stuff that I actually enjoy. Since then, I've graduated. I've joined the industry. Now I'm a professional concept artist working full time. Moved to London. I do robots by day and snakes by night, apparently.
Good sir. Make sure you unmute yourself. Oh, we'll give him a second. There he is.
Hi guys, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep,
I can hear you.
You're great.
Okay, so I'm going to make brief so I don't get stuck with pronunciation and stuff, so my English is not very good. I'm a 3D artist, aspiring one, and I've been learning 3D and about Khuresh as I do the mold implementation of the fan project for the Warhammer 3. And I've been working closely with 47 in a lot of stuff recently, and I really enjoyed all of his your work, guys. Like the concept art, the lore written behind it is super amazing, and it really inspired me to do this mod. Nothing else. I'm super happy to be here.
Awesome. And then last but certainly not least, Mr. 47 KKR.
Greetings, everyone. Andy Law and Loremaster of Sotek. A pleasure to be here. This is 47 KKR. You can call me Lewis, main lore writer and faction designer, music provider, mod coordinator for the Khuresh Fan Project, aka the Brood of the Naga Queens. Together with my wife, we also provide amateur concept art, building art, landscape art, icons, logos, and a full map for Khuresh. I'm from Sabah, Malaysian Borneo, where I've worked with local and overseas museums and cultural institutions for years in media, and I'm a committee member of the oldest active NGO in North Borneo. I'm technically the only Southeast Asian on the founder team, but yeah, it's been a blast working with these guys.
Hong Kong's close-ish. It's literally almost.
Yeah. And also, if you didn't know, we do have an entire, and when I say entire, presentation of awesome, cool stuff as I hide behind the Lorebeards sign up in the corner. Awesome, cool stuff that we're going to be discussing throughout the course of this stream. So do be prepared for an awful lot of chat. 47 is going to be taking us through all of this and taking contributions from everyone else as we go. And as we said, if we do have super chats, we're going to be bringing those up in batches. So as we make our way through a bunch of slides, we'll then bring up some super chats, talk them all out, answer any questions that may have popped up, and then progress onwards again.
Yep. So I think in typical faction, I'm going to just knock out the ones that came right at the very start, and then we're just gonna fly right into this.
Sounds like a plan. Let's go.
All All right. WPK says, hope you're good. Will you include stuff from Indonesia? Anyone on the team wants? There you go.
That was easy.
That was easy. That's what we love.
Good answer. Good question.
Henry, thank you for supporting Dark Deeds, and Andy, we appreciate that. Wonderfully done. Thank you.
Thanks, Cedric.
We'll bring a chat man. Khuresh, doing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game. We entered its borders chased by a Gorgon with the ground chunk and a Dreadmaw emerged, biting off the leg of the Gorgon, dragging it underground, then we ran like hell. Great. Excellent.
Sounds perfect, Ricky.
Correct decision again.
That sounds like a good entry to Khuresh. Super Orlok, thank you, as always, for the
Thank
little
you.
smiley face.
Appreciated.
Hoplite usually wait for vanilla content, to finish before adding mods, but I will break that rule for my snake boys.
Mhm.
Yeah, just wait until you see what these guys have really been up to. It's insane. Captain Magma, any nods to the hoo-hoo, I can't pronounce that. From Akir from the Elder Scrolls in this, also a vampiric snakeman theme.
Oh yeah. These were actually one of our inspirations at one point during the design process. It's not actually in the presentation that we're going to show today, but yeah, it was one of the things that informed the rest of the decision, along with Black Marsh.
Awesome. There you go. Magnetron, I've been waiting for this all week. See if you're watching this at the Khuresh Project and the Lorebeards Tarmacon Brothers Still to War. Sure. Yeah, it's that easy. It's just that easy. Sage Manager, what a fine selection of beers on display. Yes, of course.
It is beer-tastic.
Jason First says, namaste, y'all. To you as well. Donoman, when considering the cultural influences of Khuresh, are there certain Southeast cultures that are more dominant, or did you try and balance them out?
Most of them, they're more concentrated on the Khmer Empire, the Siamese Empire, the Majapahit or Srivijaya Empire. Most of it is around that region. Some parts of Philippines, but we try to at least make it more balanced throughout the whole faction.
I mean, it's also it's geographical, right? Based on where Khuresh is relative to the real world. It's like. What we tried to take a little bit from everywhere, but obviously it's going to be concentrated on that one specific area relative to our actual planet.
Yeah, I mean it's relatively typical for Warhammer development. If we take, say, Kislev, which initially looks a little bit like Warhammer Russia, and then you look at it and you go, oh no, it's not. It's all in the wrong place, and there's bits wrong. And then you look at what Kislev includes, and you've got things like Winged Lancers, which are not Russian. Exactly. So you tend to find that Warhammer picks and chooses and takes stuff and fantasies them up and makes it its own dial-up to 11 equivalent. So, yeah, makes sense.
I think from there, it's time for us to pop up with this PowerPoint and hop into it. Look at that. That's so cinematic.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm going to sit back and say, 47, take us away. It's worth noting, if anyone does have comments as we go, do slap them up. And we do intend to discuss a lot of this out because for all 47 could easily just go. There's almost certainly going to be questions from us as well as we go because we're super fascinated about this as well. So Sotek and I are almost certain to say, well, actually, does it have that or this? Yeah, is there one of these? As we get very excited like the children that we are.
Our job here is to interrupt constantly, and we would like you to participate in that as well. So.
Damn straight.
Well, lovely job of you two as well.
Oh, look at this.
All right, let's begin then. Let's all sit back, enjoy the journey of our project. So first things first, I'd like to thank the modding team, especially Co. Without them, we could not have gotten to this point at this time. Look at that amazing shot. Credits to Finn and Co. for this. So let's get on to it. Our project started early 2021. The whole team convened after the Grand Cathay announcement by Creative Assembly for Total War Warhammer 3. Hype was high because it was the first time a Far Eastern faction of Warhammer was fleshed out like this. RY, Ming, and I were talking about a collaboration since the two artists had previously worked on their own fan art of Cathay units and characters on their own. RY also brought in xBloodRaven too, who was active on the forums with unit lists for existing tabletop and obscure Warhammer factions. So as you can see, we worked closely together. I worked closely with Ming, and he produced a lot of these units based off of existing lore, canon lore, but outdated as of Total Warhammer 3.
I gotta say, back then, I was super
Yep.
surprised how you just found like the perfect snippet on whatever I was working on. Like, all of a sudden on the Reddit post, you'd be like, "Oh, have you seen like this part of thing?" It's like, wow, that's just perfect for what I needed to do.
It's like
Yeah.
47
Yeah.
is like, that's his
like a-
entire thing.
Yeah,
Is that like a dragon turtle there? Love it.
Yeah, with the big old
Yeah.
line on its back.
Oh, I love
The-
that
the
so
dragon-
much.
Yeah, the
Come on,
dragon
CA.
turtle was actually it was actually in Warhammer, so we just adapted it into Cathay because it does fit the mythology of China around that area. So we thought it would be a
100%.
fitting-
I did a dragon turtle for the second edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay because there was a period in the second edition where they said you couldn't have anything in the game that wasn't in the battle game, which made it really hard to bring on all the cool stuff that used to exist in the older lore, like, for example, dragon turtles. So I kind of squeezed them in because I'm a rebel, and it's super nice to see them popping up in a slightly different variety here. Really like that.
Yeah, you just take the Warhammer roll, push it dial up to 11 and
Yep.
put a rocket launcher on top.
I mean, just
Skulls and gold as well sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep. So with all of us gathered, RY asked of us what kind of Far Eastern factions that were yet unmade, yet unplayable, we work on. The choices were Nippon, In, Fishman, or Khuresh.
Fishman!
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
I'm rather amused by the Nippon Oni. I really like that. I'm building a version of Nippon over here because one of the players in LAWhammer is Japanese, half Japanese. And her character comes from Nippon in our game. So we have built an entire version of Nippon that's just for our game. And anything new Nipponese-wise, that always makes me go, oh, I wonder what that is. Oh, could I use it? Oh. And suddenly I become this great thief. And I start wanting to steal everything that I see. So yeah, rather amused by this.
Yeah, here you can see some sketches by RY showing the potential we could have gone for if we had chosen differently. In the end, however, we chose Khuresh. It felt more interesting to us as a monster-dominant faction with Naga and Snakeman. It was in Southeast Asia, which is the region I live in and was more confident in writing about. We took it as a fun challenge because it was so underdeveloped and barely anybody was coming up with good fan rosters for it at the time. So, the sheer popularity of Japanese media and culture in the Shogun II and Total War meant Nippon would receive more attention from creators drawing upon a huge list of military conflicts and yokai myths, like what happened with the 2 Nippon mods for Warhammer 3 right now. In the case of In, despite Indian Hindu-Buddhist civilization inspiring a lot of our myths and culture in Southeast Asia, I thought, let them do it for themselves. British GW might look to expand into growing Indian market first, and since there was already a huge domestic media industry in India, they could have come up with concept on their own. Factoring in all of the above. Yeah. Factoring in all of the above and how Nippon and In have more lore than Khuresh, canon lore from GW, albeit scattered and much of it outdated, we thought it was easier for GW to build upon what they had into full-fledged playable factions, like what they did with Grand Cathay in the old world.
Yeah. Wise choice. Yeah.
Yeah, now Khuresh at times that was barely talked about in fan spaces. It was, as Andy called it, a black hole of lore, and only fairly recently became Naga Snakeman territory after Forge World's Monstrous Arcanum was published. Warhammer Fantasy fans rarely knew or cared about it, or yet Khuresh had this huge unknown territory on the Warhammer world map. So, fun aesthetics in Anglophone or East Asian fantasy is very rarely seen and often disappointing or doesn't mesh well with the setting they're shoehorned in. So I thought we'd take a shot at it to realize Khuresh's untapped potential with something novel yet familiar. Now, as for the Fishmen, meanwhile, as much as we were fans of their Lovecraftian potential, as much as we could make something amazing with them, they were saved for later once the Khuresh project was finished. There was
It's a
also
serious contender.
I feel like everyone that always comes up with the Fishman of very cool, but later.
Yeah, very cool, but yeah, later. I can only say one thing about this, and I'm personally delighted that you've done this because as Sotek and I have discussed multiple times in previous streams, the number of times at Games Workshop I've attacked somewhere, often with purely English writers, without any real contact or context with the cultures that they are potentially writing about. And they have come back with, let's say, some interesting choices. So having somebody who is not only from the area and potentially steeped in that lore, but actually also tackling an area that Games Workshop themselves has completely avoided is, I think, just brilliant. I'm loving this. I'm so going to port chunks of it over to LAWhammer. It's going to happen.
Thank you, Andy. There was also the Hobgoblin cannon in the Eastern Steppes, and we'd figure GW would flesh them out in the future since they technically already have units on the tabletop. Yeah. So background reference. So we sat down and built the foundations of the design, looking at what was available canon-wise before we went into our own imaginations. First, we had Forge World's Monstrous Arcanum, the latest information on Khuresh prior to the Total War Warhammer series from CA. Passages drawn from pages 4 and 19, the latter detailing the White Sistrum artifact, was the foundation of the entire faction. Khuresh was described as a dim, night-haunted, terrifying place of fetid jungles and deadly wastes, shrouded in legends and stories, meaning people from the old world barely got in or out and could not even verify the truth. It was apparently inhabited by a dreaded, matriarchal civilization of snake men led by the nightmarish Blood Naga, who are ancient, possess an appetite for blood, surpassing even the vampires and whose rites are horrific. They're called Serpents of Chaos, who were involved in a slaughter of forgotten ages, and were at one point gripping the world in a stranglehold of terror. Humans are hunted in Khuresh, and instead of coin, the inhabitants trade in blood and souls. They're distant and inscrutable enough that artifacts rarely make it to the old world, but when they do, these objects are all deadly and esoteric. For example, the featured item, which is an ancient music-making instrument that resonates madness and death, sending horrible visions of Khuresh. It gives the bearer poison and Ulgu casting, conferring frenzy and swift stride. It buffs and debuffs magic and can send swarm of snakes bursting out of the ground towards the target. This all marked Khuresh as a uniquely monstrous and eldritch entity or power in a world of uncanny beings and realms. Of course, this could all be hearsay or deliberate misdirection from Khuresh itself or a middleman trading their artifacts, but the artifact effects points to their makers as having very potent and creepy magical abilities. What else did we have? In White Dwarf 300?
I just want to say real fast that I love the incredible passion that is immediately evident from you guys. We developed an entire faction based on about 8 sentences.
Also, you said something that for me was extremely important, and it's something that a lot of writers that have come to Games Workshop for the first time when they're writing for Games Workshop for the first time, because I've hired quite a few of these, they get wrong. And you mentioned one key fact, which was, and it might be all lies. Which is a core component when you're doing the world building for Games Workshop, where you look at what's already been written and you don't necessarily take it as the only direction. We all know that Games Workshop will happily contradict itself again and again and again on almost everything that they write anyway, but that's not quite what I mean. A lot of people who come in from the fan community who are writing for the first time take everything that's there as gospel, and they try their very best to never cross it, forgetting that the Warhammer world is a deep, rich environment and people lie. And people get things wrong, and people are, bless their souls, and coming from the UK, I can't believe I'm going to say this, racist. And when people are racist, they will often paint very black pictures where the alternative could be something that's full of richness and colour. So the very fact that you said this might not be true, or there could be something more to it, to just made me go, yes, happy, good.
Yeah, it's good, like unreliable narrators or things like retcons, whatever. I mean, so
yeah, absolutely.
Give a bit of vagueness to what it is.
Continue, good sir.
All right. So in White Dwarf 300, in the 8th edition Warhammer Big Red Rulebook, we got the Warhammer world map that gave the location of Khuresh. Here was basically Warhammer Southeast Asia, with the Velocity of the Old Ones mapped, along with a huge warpstone cache and forest goblins indicated in the northern region. There was Cathay to the north, In to the west, Nippon to the east, Ilfuani elven colonies to the south, in case of Caliph, southeast, Isles of Elithis, and east, the Tower of the Sun of Nippon. There was the Sudden Chaos Waste, which had demons, warp fire dragons, beast fiends quite near, and the Khuresh Peninsula was also very close to sea trading lanes between Cathay and the Old World. So that means Marienburg and other trading cities of the Old World, plus Norskans, plus Nagarothi raiders, plus seafaring undead vampire pirates, maybe Chaos Dwarfs who sometimes raid towards Cathay would be around the region, and potentially there could be things going on. So there was
I remember when that map was released, just as a small aside, and I remember going, Finally! It's not just Cathay and Nippon! Apparently Games Workshop thinks there's more than Chinese people and Japanese people over in the East. What the? I remember it being a whole topic of conversation, and I remember being roundly brought up for, what's your problem? There's already Nippon and Cathay. And I was like, no! Shut up! Just stop!
There's also
yeah.
Yeah, there's also a very, if anyone ever wants to laugh, I think if you go back to the 6th edition Big Red Book, the map they put in that had a misprint where they swapped Khuresh and Grand Cathay.
Right there.
Yeah, it was also in the High Elf uniforms and heraldry book too.
Super funny.
Yep. So there was one proverb from Rob Sanders' Archaon Everchosen book, which implied that they had a fatalistic might makes right philosophy. Archaon's books don't even mention what happened in ancient Khuresh, despite his fleet sailing by a few times and sending doomed expeditions into it to fight for plunder against savage southerners of similar ilk and madness around there. Then you had the 7th edition Warhammer Beastmen Army book, which indicated the 3 huge regions populated by Beastmen war herds in Khuresh. And you had the 7th edition Skaven book, which wrote about an attack on the gates of Calith by a combined Skaven clan's army and navy, indicating that their warrens reach the area and can dislodge armies.
Good find with that quotation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
In the second edition, Warhammer RPG Companion, there was a small mention of Snakemen rumored to be in the lair in the World's Edge Mountains on page 7, ruled by a queen. This might actually be Lamian, the Lamian Silver Pinnacle, with deliberately obfuscated information.
I edited that in!
Oh, you did?
That was me! Brilliant!
If it's second or 4th edition, Andy's up to his elbows in that pie.
I have you to thank for that, Andy. Thank you. Yeah, the description was vague enough, but yeah, it gave us more ideas about the whole thing.
Totally. Oh, man.
Yeah.
That made me smile. I told you I'm a rebel. I like to squeeze stuff in that they tell me not to.
So to confirm, was it actually a Snakeman outpost, or was it really just the Silver Pinnacle?
It was purposely left vague so that hopefully someone else would pick up. So it wasn't a definite.
You have fulfilled the prophecy, is what he's saying.
It came around in a circle in the end.
I'm pretty much happy now. I'm out. I'm done. That's it. I've got what I needed.
Andy's identified the chosen one.
Yep.
So there was Chaz Elliott's 3rd edition's Chaos Snakeman miniatures from Citadel Companions, but they were for his idea of Snakemen inhabiting the Northern Wastes. Though I thought his ideas of being slan experimental mistakes, that they use sigil magic and snakes riding huge burrowing giant snakes, interesting. So we paid homage to that. There was the Dreadmore from Forge World, which we could use as an aesthetic base, but it was not specifically tied to Khuresh at the time, and roamed the northern Chaos Waste, the eastern steppes, and Darklands. Still, its strange design was good, so we integrated it to a lot of our own designs, especially the one of the units you'll see later on. There were the Serpent-Human hybrids, the followers of Yashin, Slaneshi, in Blood for the Blood God by C.L. Werner. But those might just be heavily mutated human followers of Slanesh, like how Dekala is a mutated high elf.
Or is she? That's a different conversation.
Ignore him, carry on.
There was Sunken Malay, mentioned in Gotrek and Felix, Giant Slay by William King, as one of the destinations of the paths of the Old One. And I thought, hey, it sounds like Malay and had Old One tech. Could be a good fit for a place like Khuresh too.
Small aside on that one, that was going to get picked up in a book that I had sorted for commissioning just before I left as the producer for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, because we were going to be releasing an adventure with Gav Thorpe. Gav Thorpe and I were going to be co-writing it. And the adventure was called Paths of the Old Ones. And one part of it was indeed going to be touching down into Malay as is more of a touch rather than deeply going into it, and it was indeed from the way I was going to be using it, at least a direct connection to Malay.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm actually really pleased with just how much you've managed to pick up, because there's I have seen fan projects in the past where they've gone, couldn't find anything, I made it up myself. And you're like, yeah, but there's like so much out there. No, it doesn't exist. I'm making it up myself. Where this is great. I have a huge smile on my face at this end.
There was the 8th edition Wood Elves book that showed one dead world route strand headed eastward diagonally from Loren towards in and beyond. So that gave me some ideas for how the snakes could spread out and threaten the entire world in the distant past, besides only using Malay's teleportation or physically sending invading armies via land and sea. Mm-hmm. All right. So as
we're at a natural break point here. Possibly move in through the super chats there.
Yes. Let me just
because some people have been super nice.
Yes.
So let's bring those up there.
Tech 27, Lorebeards focused. Is that Lorebeards being focused is a Zinch game? Get out. How dare you? Man. Hypothetically, if CA was just like, here's insert amount of money, can we use your stuff? Would you ever be interested in pursuing down that route? For legal reasons, I am not an employee of CA.
Well, for one, I don't think CA could be the ones who do that. That would have to be Games Workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And based on what just happened with the Estalia and Talea map, I don't think that's something GW would ever realistically pursue.
Yeah, quite. If you didn't know already, the Estalia section of that map in particular was full of fan-created material. Whoever had built that map over at GW had gone online, picked a map that they thought was accurate, but it was a fan map. And then when they realized, it got yoinked, and then it came back out again, empty, dust, and tumbleweed is all that was left. So that's definitely Games Workshop's standard route. But having said that, though, they have often, through licensees, worked through what would effectively be fan projects that have been picked up by the licensee, then turned into something real and pitched to Games Workshop. In many regards, you could believe that's how a lot of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplays various editions have happened when they've been handled by various producers. I mean, I was the producer for the 4th edition, for example, and I was hiring writers from all over the place. Some of them were fans who were taking stuff that they had written for themselves and then transported that over into the game. I'll give a clean example. You know those Estalian locations that were fan created? They were fan created by an author that I hired, who was also an author for the 1st edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And he created those things because he's just a fan creating stuff that he really enjoys, but he also did it professionally. So there are many routes that fan material can eventually arrive within the official Games Workshop lore. But in this case, it would be CA that would make the first choice to pick up the thing, but it would be GW that would make the choice as to whether they could even try to pick up the thing. It would be GW as the holder of the license who ultimately not the holder of the license, who give the license out, who would ultimately determine what CA can and can't do. And they've been allowed to do a lot, but mostly in conjunction with Games Workshop rather than in conjunction with outside. So yeah, who knows where it could go.
I think we could still address the theoretical question of whether we would do that if it did happen.
Yeah.
Personally, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if Games Workshop was like, if Games Workshop came and was like, you know what, we like it, take it. We want to take it. Well, who are we to say no?
It'd be a little funny if you did, but yeah.
It would be very amazing.
Elemental exposure. Have a good stream, guys. Well, thank you very much. Have we checked the guests for gills? We allow any and all sorts in here. We are not checking for anything. Thank you very much. Fine. I will say I love the mix of monsters from Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and so on. I see you've used the Tikbalong and Pinnacle, apologies if I mispronounced that, in particular as direct bases for some of the monsters of Khuresh.
Yep, we did. You'll see a few more later on when I get to the unit army list. But yeah.
All right, excellent. We're caught up. Though I do actually have a quick question myself, which is that, so when y'all were kind of maneuvering your way through like what you wanted your segment to end up as, a comment that I've seen a few people throwing around the chat, and I've seen it often brought up with Khuresh, is that there's often a bit of a dialogue about how and this is me paraphrasing, but people have come and say, hey, my knowledge of like actual mythologies that involved Naga-esque creatures from Southeast Asia tend to have them as a more benevolent force, whereas the Games Workshop version of Naga are these chaos, terrifying monster creatures. And people have often come in and asked, is there did y'all have any discussion or thought about that? And if you did, what were your thoughts and discussion about that?
Yeah, about that, we well, first off, we prioritize what GW already wrote, so they kind of established the boundaries and the rules about how the Naga would. Because if we did create a entire faction mostly of benevolent Naga, then there would be a bit of a strange. It wouldn't really work that well. However, I did try to put in certain nuances to some of the sub-factions, some of the characters that you will see in the future. In certain local mythology, certain points of Nagas, certain cases of Nagas, or rather giant snakes in mythology in Southeast Asia, they were more of a force of nature. They weren't necessarily benevolent. They might just kill. It was mostly like Ethel Loren, in the sense that if you stumble upon the wrong place, wrong time, they would just be merciless towards you, and they won't necessarily protect you. That would the protection Naga is mostly coming from the Hindu Buddhist side, yeah, which has Mukhalinda and Antasesha and so on and so forth. But yeah,
Awesome, great.
Cool.
Carry
Happy
on.
with that? Let's carry on then.
all right. So with the new info that was released while we were doing the project, and in Total War Warhammer 3, it was released. The 4th edition Warhammer RPG came out, and the Old World was announced. That was around the time we were already creating the units and the faction background. Though they only had a few Khuresh mentions here and there, there were some things that we could still draw on. So in Warhammer 3, Khuresh frequently attacks at Catay's southern provinces ruled by the Fire Dragon Li Dao, who chafed at the lack of recognition he received defending the southern border against Ind and Khuresh. Because of these sudden threats, there's a grudging alliance between him and the Monkey King to fend off assaults despite them being technical enemies. The Cathay southern border is lined with huge cannon towers, indicating that something really dangerous was on the other side, and the border region was called Serpent Estuary, with a nearby presence of Nakai in Immortal Empires. There was a reiteration in the Old World's core rule book, which also mentioned, this is for Tau, that also mentioned that Norskans might have colonies as far as Khuresh, and that the Khureshi are still attacking Cathay too. But the most important lore injection came from Cubicle 7's 4th edition RPG Imperial Zoo supplement. There, the Dreadmaws were tied to Khuresh for the first time, and were created by the Naga, or said to be created by the Naga, to guard against encroachment on their realm, indicating skill with biomanipulation. There was also a Khuresh cult presence in Sylvania, perhaps revisiting the 2nd edition RPG idea of Snakemen in the World's Edge Mountains, who were trying to open a portal to summon in the Dreadmaw within the boundaries of the Empire, but apparently thwarted.
Awesome.
Then there was confirmation that the Old Ones built temple cities in Lustria from the Lustria supplement book, and there was also a stolen Naga crown in a private Nordlander collection in the Salzman book.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was also this guy from Red
You've drawn a book too.
Oh, I'm the detector. Hell
Excuse me,
yeah.
to interrupt your marvelous presentation, but I would just like to give you a round of applause for doing that. Well
thank you.
done. I mean, so often Blood Bowl is ignored in the greater lore, and I think that's a mistake because you tend to find that Blood Bowl is often copy-pasted in and out of Warhammer at a bunch of times. Take, for example, not that I'm going to toot my own horn, but I will, the gnomes that got added to Blood Bowl. The gnomes that got added to Blood Bowl pretty much copy-pasted the stuff that I wrote for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4, and then just went copy, paste, and then just embellished as required to make it more Nuffle Blood Bowl facing. So I'm delighted that you have chosen this because it is one that I would have expected you to skip. So big thumbs up from me. Love
There was
that.
there's a team called the Khureshi Cobras, if I recall correctly. So I guess we've been waiting how many years to see
50.
Yeah. It's a long time ago, that one. Yeah. So there was this Snakeman from Blood Bowl, though he plays for Lustria, and Khuresh isn't even mentioned in his description, but at least it gives you an idea of the Snakeman aesthetic that Games Workshop is going for. And maybe there's Snakeman subgroups in Khuresh, but maybe that's just in Blood Bowl.
I hope you have slightly better naming practices.
Oh, yeah.
Constrictor.
You still need some puns in there. You still need stuff.
I mean, you do.
Yeah.
It's an
Part
essential
of the IP.
component.
It's part
It
of
is.
the IP.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, this
Oh
is
yeah,
I work
forgot
from
to get
Hawaii.
I forgot to get an Unreal Engine actually.
Hey,
Just curious, as we go into this piece, can someone, whoever made this piece, describe what we're looking at?
Well, I mean, essentially, we were discussing about like what the environment was like in Khuresh, and it was very much like drawing a lot of just like a ton of the biggest point of reference, obviously, is Angkor Wat, right? It's like that overgrown, oppressive jungle nature, and just like an environment super hostile where like you would just be like lost in it. And I very much like wanted to like bring it out that like foreboding mood of like, all right, you're in the jungle. If you're a human, you have no idea where anything is. But if you look, you'll stumble upon weird ruins like the snake men are definitely there. You see signs of them if you try to look hard enough. It's just very oppressive, very spooky, very creepy, and there's definitely something here that you don't want to be running into.
Nice. Before we move on to the next bit, let's grab the couple of super chats as well, so they don't pile up.
Good idea.
Stopping point.
Darius Road had the privilege of visiting a museum exhibit of the Khmer Empire from the statues of Angkor, with seeing some Naga statues as well. Super cool. Is there any evidence of human civilization in Khuresh?
Yes.
There you
Is
go.
that something you're getting to?
We will cover it.
We'll cover it later on.
Done.
Technically, in Talea, there's a Gorgon, is a terrifying snake-headed female monster with long, thin claws and small, sharp teeth, through which the creature hisses like a serpent. Also, snake people, blood for the blood god book. There you go.
Oh yeah, Gorgonzola.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, God.
Okay. Right, let's move on.
All right. So, informed by all these factors, we went into the design of the faction. Due to its geographical placement on the map, the rulers being Naga and the dominant serpent themes, we opted for Southeast Asia as the base historical, mythological, and cultural region to draw from, with the Khmer Empire and Siamese empires as the main inspirations.
Oh, nice.
I then selected mythological creatures, real-life fauna and flora, and historical fighters that would mesh well with the existing lore of Warhammer Fantasy and the thematic base of our vision of Khuresh, as well as how interesting they'd be in a Khuresh tabletop army, for example. These were blended together and mixed with Southeast Asian occultism media to give it that pulp vibe found throughout the rest of the factions in Warhammer Fantasy. For the snakes, instead of generic evil monster snakes with no clear origin or snakes taken from everywhere else across the world, I opted to prioritize the stranger and more interesting Southeast Asian, South Asian, and Oceanian species and extrapolated on serpent themes like what GW did with the Skaven. We also presented the Snakeman as a sort of foil to the Lizardman and considered existing factions from Sister Franchise 40K, which fit a similar tone to the Khuresh as we were envisioning, such as the Tyranids, the Gene Stealers, and the Drukhari, so that the fantasy Khuresh felt right.
I'm loving the tone so far. You've got me sold.
Thank you, Andy. Then it came to the question of whether they were an indigenous life form like the dragons or an old one created race like the Slan, but were thrown to the wayside. We picked the latter to contrast them against the rigid old one loyalists of the Lizardmen and to create opportunities where you could play around with their biological manipulation, their meddling with old one tech in strange etheric ways. It was also in a way to consolidate the ideas of Chaz Elliott and Graham Davis into the modern Snakeman idea put forth in Monstrous Arcanum by Alan Bly. So yes, there will still be Snakemen in the north, just concentrated mostly in the Khuresh Peninsula. Then we addressed the matter of what form of chaos were they? Were they aligned exclusively to the Four, or were they beholden to another deity like the Chaos Dwarves? The majority of the team decided that it would be more interesting if they were Chaos-aligned, but primarily revered their own deity, similar to the Chaos Dwarves with Hashut and the Skaven with the Horned Rat. This would take the form of Nagendra, a possible twisted old one, which I'll get into future releases, but it alluded to the Nagendra and the Coiling Ones from Age of Sigmar. The idea was that whatever they were doing in Khuresh at the time of the end times, they succeeded in ascending, so to speak, and continue to exist in AOS as the Coiling Ones to maintain narrative continuity. Some of the Elder Naga Queens, meanwhile, are more devoted to specific Chaos gods, such as Slanesh, who in our universe is called Smara, or the Oblivion Serpent locally. Also Zinch and Urgat. One particular recalcitrant faction is instead aligned with the gods of law, specifically Daura, or what people would know as Verena, and has support from the entity that might be Loek, as the elves know him, but that's for another time.
I will say that I absolutely love that you're immediately throwing a lot of really, what I would almost say is like roleplay-esque confusion and diversity into the mix of that. They've got like this really messy group of gods, which is great. Of that, I think my biggest fear with Khuresh would always be that they would just worship the 4 main chaos powers, because I think that would be very just not exciting, and would also pull very hard away from taking better theming from the cultures that inspires them. So I think y'all absolutely stuck the landing with that. Now I will also say that until we hit those last 2 slides, I was always very much more on the team of I really prefer the Naga as like a pre-race that were there before the old ones. But now after watching or observing your little points there, I'm pretty damn convinced on y'all's side that I actually think that y'all are correct to go with the messed up experiments angle.
Yeah, I don't just agree. I strongly agree, because there are very few opportunities to add something that's different to what already exists out there. And this is a route that hasn't been taken strongly by anything else, which is a failed experiment of the old ones. We've got successful use of the old ones. We've got the great races that they elevated, the species that they took and turned into something else. But we don't have something that is objectively marked as something that went wrong, which also adds a little bit of extra color to the old ones and potentially what they are or are not, which I think is super cool. The idea of a fallen old one, controversial, kind of like it, depends where it lands. The idea of adding your own chaos god to the mix, I think, is not just essential, it's absolutely essential. In fact, I was a little bit worried when you went, there's one, and I was like, oh no, they're just gonna have one, but there's more, and I was like, oh thank god. Because the idea of just having a single deity ruling over that sort of area in an area that already has all manner of different potential deity options, it would have been, I think, a sad reflection of everything that could potentially have been done. So the idea that you've broadened out that umbrella, that's good. Added your own bits, brilliant. But also taken in some of the other gods and potentially added different reflections of them, I think is brilliant and good. The gods in Warhammer are absolutely real, and it's something that a lot of writers tend to forget. They go to a new area and they just go, well, I'll just make up all the new area stuff then. And they forget that there is some universal constants across the Warhammer world, and those universal constants appear in different ways in different parts of the world. And so instead of just trying to take those constants and say, how would they be perceived through a different cultural lens? How do they manifest here in their own ways? They instead go, I've just made something new up. And it's really nice to see that you're doing a nice mixture of the two, adding where adding will hopefully help, but also reinterpreting where that will also add to the greater context of the Warhammer world as a whole. So yeah, big smiles from me.
For my own 2 cents, I think like 47 and BloodRavens, they've done an amazing job of like sort of like balancing. You know, there's like balance act between like, oh, it's too disconnected or it's too connected, right? You can like, oh, they just worship the chaos gods, the normal chaos gods, you already know. Or it's like, oh, completely new stuff that you never heard of. And I feel like our writers have done a really good job of just being like, all right, there is some new stuff, but it still relates back to the greater world, right? It feels right.
Yeah, I love that. What did you say the guardian deity was? It Nagandara?
Yeah, Nagandara.
Nagandara.
Yeah, Nagandara. It's not quite the same as the one from Age of Sigmar.
Yep. Yeah. I was just getting the links there. No,
Also,
that's good.
Very clever play to already have a AOS tie-in to them. Great.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I think that's chef's kiss as a moment. I do like that because it also gives a deeper connection to the overall lore and setting. Love it.
Also, the Dara at the back is a suffix that it means blood in Indonesian and Malay, so it all fits up together.
Oh, I love that! Oh, I am such an easy lay. Oh, that's good. Right, what's next? He said excitedly.
All right, so after that we go to the main army roster. So it's relatively modest, relatively. We have 2 generic lord choices, 3 generic hero choices, infantry that included chaff, melee, range, specials, smaller harasser, war beasts, and chariots. Khuresh doesn't really have traditional cavalry, as the snake infantry is quite fast. War machines that acted as artillery and unit buffers, the iconic monsters for shock and awe, and aerial units for reach and to heighten that eldritch factor. We also have legendary lords and heroes along with their attached sub-faction units that we haven't revealed yet, but those will come later on.
Aw. Love it. I did the same when we were building our Nippon. I did exactly the same thing, and it was the bit I sort of enjoyed doing most. Because, we're building all the cultural bits, we're doing all the bits for our Nippon, but then when we're actually translating that into, what would it be if it was a proper army in the game?
I go crazy.
That was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Look at this incredible like detail art of like taking a regular snake and making it into a Khureshi Naga snake. This is fantastic art.
This is Warhammered.
So
We have to thank our wife for that.
I mean, the thing with being, I'm like I said, I'm a professional concept artist, right? And how I like to think about concept art is each concept art is basically a mini art director. And if you're going to work on a project, you need art direction. You need to figure out what consistent rules sets you want to play within, so that all our stuff fits in the same box, makes sense, and it all fits together and creates a cohesive look. So the first thing that I did when we agreed that all right, we're gonna sit down, we'll get to Khuresh, was that I came down, I did a bunch of sketches of all right, here's a bunch of visual motifs we can reuse. Here's we have real snakes. How do we make snakes creepy and spooky, and how do we make them scary? As if snakes weren't scary enough, but they're pretty creepy. But Warhammer, we gotta push it just a little bit more up, dial up to 11. So I did a bunch of investigations for that, and sketches. And also, obviously,
you always have that one guy in chat.
I mean, look, we had that discussion.
Dragon magic.
We did absolutely have the discussions. Do snakes have boobs?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a classic discussion.
Do we make hot snake?
I mean,
that was all me.
They're already hot. Don't body shame. They're very hot already. So yes, we also wanted to figure out, what the body type, there's so many, obviously Naga don't really exist. So how do we want to approach them in different media? There's a lot of different ways of exploring the anatomy. How do you want to do it? And that's where you see where I was doing my second set sketches and figuring out how does that skeletal structure works.
And just to add, with 2 concept artists on this project, obviously RY and me have different styles, but having a style guide like this really help converge onto the same idea, that it becomes more cohesive across all the designs. So
that's what art direction's for, baby.
It is. And you've written snake in it. Sold.
Look, I know my shit. I know my audience.
You know your audience. Hey.
I cannot believe y'all have
Fuck me.
gorgeous functional 3D models. Look at that.
Oh.
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So
Where's my
that
snake
came-
boobs? But
So yeah, this is
can you make a turn again? Because that was awesome.
Yeah.
And yes, I am a child.
I will also like to point out that I did for a lot of the concept art I actually did start with 3D models. So those the 3D artists actually redid my 3D models while I had them already.
yeah, credits to model Rabs for the amazing 3D model that he did for Warhammer 3. Yeah. So first up, the backbone infantry of Khuresh. They were designed to contrast the Saurus warriors, all being venomous, regenerating, swift, and adaptable, with their main weapons prioritizing reach. They would also come with morphs, genetic modifications that would give them different sets of benefits and powers, sort of like marks of chaos, depending on the occult science used by their subfaction.
Okay,
I love
so
that
just,
you can.
I do have a slight question that arises from that. Given that you're having them chaos facing, are you going to have mutation as a concept that is part of what they are, or is it more morphs, more controlled? And if that's the case, where exactly does the chaos leaning that they have manifest?
So the chaos leaning manifests in the sort of abilities that they would have in certain subfactions. There's a Slaneshi subfaction that will prioritize using the Dreaming Wood and powers related to that. There's a Nurgle subfaction that would prioritize the ocean aspect of Nurgle that is usually not seen as much. There's the Zintian one, so that comes with certain abilities that would have, and then that would kind of modify how they physically look. Yeah, pretty
so
much.
Loosely, relatively, in the greater scheme of if we were making rules for them, they would actually be relatively resistant to mutation. Mutation being rare for them, the change that is wrought upon their bodies is much more likely to be manipulated by themselves, whether it's the morphs or their own, I presume they're sorcerer scientists or whatever else that they might have. But it's more of a they're doing it themselves rather than the chaos gods and their wandering, somewhat crazy eyes suddenly giving them extra limbs and I don't know, boobs. So if we're building rules for these, we'd probably say deeply resistant to mutation in the same way that, say, for example, dwarfs are.
Yeah, there are certain aspects because even the ogres eventually get corrupted, given enough kind of, So the Snakemen or the Naga actually have a sort of this will be shown more in the legendary lords and heroes. They kind of reverse mutate instead of reptilian. They become slightly more human as they age. So there's this certain difference in that sort of thing. And there will be certain cases.
Anthropomorphize as the age.
Yeah, I will say though, I do like that because I think that maintains that kind of like they're almost corruptive lizardmen type relationship. Where lizardmen, it's very pretty rare to see lizardmen running around with any forms of mutations. So the idea that the Naga have kind of held on to that in a sense, where their mutations almost have to be forced through by the Khureshi science, as opposed to something that just randomly happens as an expression of chaos, I think is a good way to take it.
Yeah, love it. Okay. Cool.
So the Sarpa warriors are based off the White-lipped Pit Viper. The weapons are the Karis Tombak and the Mark Polam from Indochina. And here we have the first reveal of a new weapon variant for the Sarpa. Yeah, the Headhunter's Axe. This is made by our modder Ko. It's the a armor-piercing weapon based off the Kalinga or Igorot head axe from the Philippines, which you can see on the new Khuresh crest I did as a tribute to the faction symbols from the 8th edition Warhammer Big Red Book.
Hell yeah. Man, that looks like it would just fit right in, too.
Yep. So next up, we had the design to look for the Blood Naga themselves. These would be called the Hesi now, the lesser queens, descendants of the true rulers of Khuresh, meant to oversee smaller city-states, fortresses, and outposts in the name of their elder matriarchs, the primeval sages. Through the Hesi, we established the basic visual design of Naga leadership, prioritizing reptilian attributes even as they look like warped humans. Their design was inspired by a combination of the mythical Rangda from Bali, Khmer, Thai, Indian depictions of humanoid Naga, the multi-armed silhouettes of Dekala, and the 40k Slith. And their attire and equipment were sourced from Sumatran Batak elements.
Sold.
The generic spellcaster, Lord Choice.
Man, look at that. I had so much fun drawing this one.
Excuse me, I'm cackling like an old witch. Oh,
that's probably how they cackle, Andy. You're just getting in character.
Look at that thing! Holy shit! Yes.
If all of my art got cackles from somebody, I would be so much more satisfied.
I'm happily cackling at this side. Oh, holy crap!
I do have to say, I can immediately see what you were talking about. With they get almost more human-like. Like the face is so much creepier looking than the regular warriors.
Yep.
Yeah, it's much more expressive. They kind of show more kind of sinister aspect of them. I think there's a lot more thought going behind them in their heads.
Yeah, they're like diving into the uncanny valley as they get older, which is great.
Very much where I was going for.
The black and white one is that that feels sinister as fuck, and I like that. It's just it just feels sinister, and the character running through the color piece. I can almost see the army and what it could potentially be just from that piece alone. Holy crap! I'm a happy man. Look at that.
Yeah, thank you, RY, for the design. So the generic spellcaster lore choice of Khuresh, the Hesi, would have access to a host of magic types, including the lores of life, beast, shadow, heavens, death, dark magic, and their own unique lore that I'll get to the next slide. Subfactions will also offer the lores of fire, metal, and light, as well as the lores of Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slanesh.
Nice.
Yep, good.
Here on Lorebeards again, I'd like to unveil Khuresh's new lore of the Blood Naga called Zixa. As you can see, I did. Yeah.
As we dive into the potential horrors of that, let's quickly take our super chat since some people would be very nice to drop some lovely comments in.
I love the lore symbol, the like hand reaching out of the snake mouth. That's great.
Thank you.
Let's see. I left off here. Love from the Philippines, Southeast Asia represent. Oh,
excellent.
Zylak, Philippines, Bacanawa, giant snake eating the moon. Oh man, that sounds like it should, that sounds like a fun myth. That would be super
spooky. There's a myth regarding Mooresleb in that.
Yeah. Or I mean,
a good one too.
To be even scarier if they're trying to eat manslib.
Manslib. That'd be.
The Skaven tribe blow up. They try eat it.
Well, hey, that could be a great source of conflict. Hoplite,
and take on the moon.
Up. 2 thumbs up for Snakemen as foils for Lizardmen. I agree. Yep. Dynaman, I know you've likely focused on land units and navies similar to that of Southeast Asian ships, like the Machapati ships. However, if you wanted to see monster, Mosasaurs are actually very closely related to snakes. The largest IRL could get around 17 meters, nearly 60 feet, but it's Warhammer, so triple that, I would say.
Only triple. Somebody's restraining themselves here.
Only 3 times.
Scion, do your Naga have a particular rivalry with any of the other races? I could see them, of course, loathing the Lizardmen in particular, maybe even working with the Skaven against them due to the degree of hatred and resentment they hold. So do you have any comments on that?
Should we talk about that later, or
if there's a slide for that, then we can just wait till the slide.
Yeah, let's wait till we get the slide.
Technically, we don't have a slide on that in this presentation because this is more focused on the main roster, but in the background there's more of a it depends on the subfactions, but in general they all kind of have an animosity towards the Lizardmen for being the chosen children, and then they have a rivalry with Grand Cathay and the dragons that rule Grand Cathay. Yeah.
Great.
And some rivalry with the elves too.
Any Skaven connections? Because I imagine the Skavens we've got ourselves a pretty hot steaming jungle.
Oh yeah. We do have Skaven connection. That will be in a later slide. Yeah.
Excellent. Glad to hear.
Who hasn't had odd thoughts of the XCOM 2 fight? Yeah, they brought boob snakes to the fore.
You've got snake boobs right there.
Yeah.
Snaky boobs.
This sounds similar to the Chaos Force in that they're mostly immune to mutation, but more horrific bioengineers rather than Hellfire industrialists.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that. They're bioengineering and modifying themselves and taking other. It's like think of like scientists, except taken to this horrific degree. As in, like, no morality, no restraints. They will modify anything they can find, or they see themselves as perfecting anything that they can find, instead of restraining themselves and keeping things like as a great plan sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that, and I think they'll do such a good job as well. If you can kind of see that like almost Tyranid Dark Eldar influence, but it's still going in a unique direction. I love the idea, like you're saying, where they almost have an obsession with trying to improve on life forms as they find them, which is horrible, but also deeply interesting.
Fabulous, eat your heart out.
10,000 ants. Are there any Beastmen, Greenskins, or Skaven in y'all's version of Khuresh?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've drawn
them. Just out of curiosity, I was about to say that. Have you already concepted out how you could see the say the Greenskins, for example, manifesting different with different cultural influences upon how they themselves are going to be present, and Beastmen as well? Or have you just pretty much gone with, they're there and we'll not worry about it?
Actually, I have actually in the background lore of it. The northern region, currently called Scon Basin in the background, there will be certain different types of forest spider species, giant spider species that they use. Sub-factions of the Naga will interact with them a bit differently. There's jungle orcs of different types based off certain mythological characters from Indonesian, Javanese, and Burmese mythology. So yeah, all of that is informed inside the general wider lore of Khuresh that we wrote.
And you'll see
Awesome.
more later because some that does tie into the units as well.
Oh, awesome. I mean, that's exactly what I hoped. I've seen altogether too, often, again, the established tropes become the standard that is used. So if you've got an idea of what a green skin looks like, they just copy paste it over and say, oh, they're just there, but now they're in a jungle. Almost like they have somehow managed to invade from halfway across the world and pick up anything along the way and just arrive looking like Western goblins or whatever it might be. So it's really nice that you've taken it to the obvious and logical next step, which is if you're in a different world doing different things, they're going to have their own cultures and they're going to have adapted over the course of however many thousand years to manifest in their own ways, entirely taking on a lot of what's around them as well as having their own unique expressions. So huge happy smile for me on that one, because hey, that means we can have greenskins in a different way, which is cool. Skaven looking different, which is also cool, and it always brings a happy smile.
You're giving more work to the concept artist. Now we're gonna have to draw all that out as
That's
well.
my job. I am happy, inspiring artist to go away and go, oh god damn it, I now want to draw all this cool shit.
Inspiring, torturing, yeah.
It's exactly the same thing.
Tortured artists. It is a thing.
Donovan says, apologize if this is too cringy, but are there any references to Ka from the Jungle Book?
Actually, yes. One of the capital cities of the Naga, a nomadic drifting one in the sky using archimancy, is actually kind of named with that, but it's combined with another mythological term from Indochina and maritime Southeast Asia. So yeah, it actually is. It as a pun, but yeah.
Love it. Captain Magma, space race between the Skaven and Naga would be funny to see Skaven and Naga have their own.
This one's actually kind of in the works with one subfaction in particular, with Mansleep and Moresleep, but that's for later.
Excellent. Yeah, because I could easily imagine there being like quite a thing between, like, especially like Clan Mulder and the Naga. Garg! Very happy for this project. Thank you. Is there any one possible representation for the Snakemen, perhaps added to in the future?
Oh, actually, yeah, the Hmong tribe. Yeah. Actually, one of the artillery, I think, is based off a Hmong instrument that they have.
Oh, that one. Yeah. That one's
Very cool. Look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Greg Ruby, you should sell these as 3D prints. They're beautiful.
Oh, we don't want to get sued by Games
There's
Workshop.
some legal stuff there. Let's,
Yeah.
It's always a difficult line to walk that I'm working with someone else's IP and I'm creating something unique. But I don't want. No, I just shouldn't. And generally, I think you're taking the right line by not doing. And if you do, it literally can't have anything to do with Games Workshop in the slightest. It can't be sold as Khureshi units. It can't be sold as anything like that. It's just generic Lizardman stuff, Snake Men and stuff that you can use if you wish.
Yeah, I've done
Afterhouse Studios incidents in that case.
So I've done I've done work for Games Workshop before with I've done comics and stuff for Games Workshop, and I also do my own comics. I have read those licensing rules very extensively, and I'm just I'm not gonna touch that with 10-foot pole. I just don't do that.
Yeah, I was responsible for getting in contact with people frequently who had crossed the line, because pretty much the entirety of the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay crowd do an incredibly large amount of incredibly cool fan work. And there is a line, a very clear line that Games Workshop has in place. And I was often pinged by Games Workshop saying something along the lines of, yeah, we spotted this, can you please not? It's well, it's not me, but sure. So I would often, because I was leading the fan community as well as running the game, I was often in that unenviable position of telling people, sorry, you can't. It's not a great place to be, but yeah, it is what it is.
Something, Cubicle 7, release an open license, you coward, something. Thoughts Apprentice, how do the Nagas reproduce in your version of the lore? My theory is it's a mix of the Las Plagas and parasitoid wasp, but they lay eggs in their victims with each of their organs.
Oh,
gross.
That's nasty.
And then the second one says, the eggs alter the slave into being a thrall until the Nagas mature and then slithers out of their orifices like their mouth. Gross.
That would be very Warhammer, to be fair.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
Oh, Thoth.
Have y'all had any discussion about Naga reproductive?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
we have.
actually did. XPR, you want to take this one? XBloodRaven.
Sorry, apologies. No, it's just sitting over. Yeah, we were thinking kind of along the lines of kind of like just spawning pools in a way, or maybe the old ones had specific spawning pools just for the Naga and Snakeman. But we were potentially thinking maybe there is some conventional reproduction. Because I mean, there is obviously the matriarchal aspect of it. So.
Mm-hmm.
I would be, not just because Thoth said it, but I would be very tempted to use the idea of using other species as spawning pools under certain circumstances, or having a faction that uses living creatures as spawning pools, and particularly if they're bioengineering. So instead of using your classic, pool with and stone edges and all sorts of statues at the side or whatever else it might be, actually having like this big open creature that has been effectively turned into an enormous spawning pool for them, using the very blood of the creature to enhance them in a variety of horrific ways. So it can make for a nice side heretic group, perhaps, or even a core group behind.
I was going to say
Blood Queens or something. It'd be
that could be
love it.
That could
nice
be a
Thoth.
That could be a great sub-faction of the idea that there's a sub-faction that got cut off from the spawning pools, and so they had to innovate and make some new horrific way of continuing on.
Mm-hmm.
That could be fun, yeah.
This is a bit of a side tangent, but like, have any of you guys played or seen Black Myth Wukong?
I've
not yet. I'm meaning to play it.
Yeah, it's on the
yet.
to-do list.
Okay, so there is in I believe what was it, the
Gotta go do it.
second level. There is an area where there's just a huge, just like a ridiculously large pool of blood. When I got there, I was like, oh, you know what? This would work really well as a spawning pool for the Naga in my head. I was like, you should look up the Tiger Vanguard fight. It's just a big ass pool of blood. I was like,
cool. I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna go buy the game and play it because I keep meaning to do it and haven't done it yet.
I'll let your Twitter ask. Could I ask if the Naga / Sigmund drink any form of booze? Do you have an idea of what it would be?
Yes, actually, yes. I have written a list of booze and rituals for the Naga.
Ah, lore.
These are important questions.
They are.
They think they caught you off guard. No.
Yeah, we'll have to at some point, because this presentation I think is more focused from like a Total War lens, but at some point we'll have to have them back on to do like a more of a roleplay focused lens, and really dive into a lot of goody details with that. Scion, are any of the legendary lords or heroes basically a Naga equivalent of Fabius Bile?
Yes, the main one that we haven't revealed yet is basically a female Fabius Bile. I'll give more information on her when we get to her.
Perfect. Yeah, these actually had a chance to build up. Would you say their ability to give a vector to mutation prevents issues like uncontrolled mutation?
I would say so, yeah. There would be that kind of factor to it, yeah.
There you go.
I could see it definitely influencing a lot of their religious practices as well. I could also see some of them wishing that they were more susceptible to it. Particularly if they're worshipping chaos. If you take the core ethos behind many of the chaos worshippers you find in other parts of the world, and the blessings of the chaos gods as they are perceived to be, the mutations that they receive are good things, and not being able to receive those blessings would be seen by outsiders very much as a negative. So I could see them both feeling superior in some cases. No, we do it ourselves, we do it in our own way, and others wishing that was the case. People are complicated. They're going to go in lots of different directions. But I could definitely see that having a significant impact on the psychology of individuals. Some of whom would look outside and go, I wish, because grass is always greener.
FA41, do your snake men have any notable connection or rivalry with the serpent god Sotek?
That's another lore-heavy question, isn't it? And then you bring in other deities like Asaf, and you have Hecate and Asharti and all these snake gods. Yes, there is a certain connection between the deity that they revere and the lizardman snake god Sotek, but yeah, that's for a later reveal.
Yeah, that's
for a later date.
Yeah, I think I think there's potentially a fascinating question there as well because of the later birth of Sotek as a god, much later than the old ones, much later, and also the birth of a lizardman god specifically from the lizardmen and what the Prophet of Sotek meant to the entire group that were the lizardmen as they moved into almost a different phase of their evolution. And they moved from being basically old one worshippers to being also something else worshippers. And I definitely think that would have an interesting impact to discuss and work out according to how you decide exactly where your deities land. I think there's all manner of fascinating awesome that could drop in there, particularly with the birth of Sotek and what that means when the ripples of the birth of a god spread out across the world and snake man facing creatures are then presented with something very different on their doorstep. I think that's quite fun, particularly given that there's going to be lizardmen probably in your continent, the lost cities of lizardmen doing whatever. So that could also be that births there and you get your red-crested skinks et al. Birthing out of there and Sotek rising in the middle of the steaming jungle. Do we perhaps have a host of what effectively become anti-chaos cults that start rising up in a variety of ways? Lots of fodder there, which is super cool.
Captain Magma asks, have y'all considered having a reference to North Sentinel Island with some kind of very hostile human tribe somewhere in the area that Stinkmen cannot influence no matter how hard they attempt to?
Actually, we do, but that's in another subject. Yeah, that's the one connected to Sunken Malay. But yeah.
Silent the Emperor, how much influence do the Naga have on the wider world, in your opinion? Do they have colonies or outposts in the wider world to push their agenda, or are they mostly restricted to Khuresh itself, similar to how the Chaos Wars are mostly isolated within the Darklands?
Yes, originally we were kind of more modest about the extent of how much influence Khuresh had, because usually, in previous canon works, no one really talked about them, so you'd think that their influence was kind of stymied by a lot of different forces. But because of Imperial Zoo from Warhammer RPG, Cubicle 7, allowing a serpent cult active in Sylvania, of all places, near the Empire, we opted for more representation of different groups of snakemen scattered throughout the world, mostly around the old world in places that the old world civilizations don't usually deal with or interact with, mostly in, say, the unexplored eastern steppes where the Hung civilizations are, in the mountains to the north of their golden cities, or the southern wastes where barely anyone goes there. And then there's places like Lumbria, for instance. But yeah.
Lumbria. I would generally suggest that whenever you're building a new faction for Warhammer, always have at the back of your mind, how does it fight with everybody else?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a core component of all Warhammer factions. So I'll finish my point. It's a short one. The 5th edition and 6th edition sort of fuck this up a bit. Because they created islands with some of their factions. The Wood Elves were an island, and the Lizardmen were an island that very rarely had any reason to mix with the others. And later editions went, oh, actually, no, there's the roots of the world, and they go everywhere. Wood Elves can teleport. Woohoo! And our Lizardmen have passed to the old ones. They could be fighting anywhere. Woohoo! So always ensuring that whatever your new faction is has got a method of sailing halfway across the world and kicking in the Empire is always a good idea.
We have a unit, the filed one, who can create cults effectively and infiltrate into society, and that unit's, again, it's not physical stuff and armies appearing out of nowhere, but that one helps to contribute to Khureshi influence spreading a lot more sinister and
classic chaos cults.
I was about to bring that up. We will see a little bit more of that later as we go through the roster.
Yeah,
excellent. I'm excited.
Okay, we just got just a small amount more. Random suggestion: instead, if you have goblins riding on giant wolves, maybe instead of the giant wolf goblins in Khuresh, they ride on giant mongoose.
Ricky Tikky Tavi. Yeah.
I actually did think of a mongoose kind of unit, but yeah.
I love how everything is just like, hey, have you thought of this? And then we're just like, yes.
Yeah, we did.
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Did we ever entertain snake riding on snake?
We do have snake riding on snake.
We do.
We did, right? We thought about it.
So already with some of their troops.
The generic, the spellcaster rides on a Dreadmore or
Yep.
one of the Pyronaga
Right.
that we'll show later.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
How my friend told me on this game before was like, hey, there's dinos riding dinos. I was like, okay, that is so stupid. That is awesome.
Yeah,
So
it is.
that is always how you get people with lizardmen.
yeah.
Vital question from Dynaman: do the Naga have a form of nasi goreng? If not, they are truly an evil and lost race because it's delicious.
The humans do. The Naga don't. So yeah, that should tell you something.
They are evil.
Jack Ruby, do the Naga have any form of a navy? And if they do they fight with the pawn a lot?
There is one specific subfaction that is actually an exiled serpent cult from Nippon. They used to rule swaths of Nippon, and now they're more isolated in the eastern side of Khuresh now. And they do have, in fact, multiple ports, one very big harbor, which is shrouded in lightning and storms. They do have the ships that are based off Southeast Asian ships and navies. There's also the ones who inhabit sunken Malay, but they, instead of ships, those are more like sea crates, sea snakes. They move around.
Very cool.
As biologically good creatures.
I have done a little bit. Like I had like one of the morph sketches earlier was of like a sea adapted Naga, and I do intend to like do a little bit more art of it when I do have time.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, then last one, which this one's big. Phil, hey, I'm the Git who was wondering if there were any issues of cultural appropriation with the Naga being inherently evil on a previous stream. I'd like to ask, are there any particular issues when it comes to writing non-human species that are meant to be a substitute for very real human cultures? Because I'd like to do a similar Warhammer project in mind along these lines and would appreciate your thoughts. Thanks in advance.
As a Southeast Asian of indigenous descent, not really for my case. Well, I can only speak for me because it's mostly just for fun and this kind of thing. And I tweak the Naga specifically so that it doesn't quite draw one-to-one from real mythology or culture, so that it's more still a case of Warhammer. It's still part of the universe that it's constrained inside it. So that's my thought.
I think when it comes to like things like this, it's very contextual, right? Like we have somebody Southeast Asian as our lead writer, it's not like it's not like British guys coming in without any knowledge and just like writing a thing without knowing the subject matter. I feel like a lot of that, whether or not that like culture is evil within the lore, I think doesn't matter so much as whether it is knowing and faithful representation of that culture, right? We're doing a lot of like research into the actual motifs, the actual like we have like a lore. It ties all back into real mythology. We understand what it is. We're not doing it out of just like, oh, we don't understand. It's just like here we think this is what it is, and we made them evil. Like, yes, they are evil in the lore, but also like that doesn't mean they're not an interesting representation and reflection of the real life culture.
Yeah, and there's some factions as well that are not effectively evil, even they have much more different objectives and other basically which they publish bar, just to kill everyone and slave and all that stuff. It's not just
I mean, there's way worse offenders in Warhammer. I mean, look, there's. I mean, the Mongols should be pretty angry about the
the Khanate,
the Khanates. There's way worse.
Yeah, as anyone who's watched any previous Lorebeards will know, I bang my drum about this quite a lot because Games Workshop has done a lot of. Well, let's say they've committed some sin in this area more than once in the past, more than 10, a lot. There's no, you can't, no. And it is fun to take a culture and go, what if? And then it's fun taking multiples and pulling them together and going, what if? But if you happen to be a big company like, say, Games Workshop, and you take someone else's culture and you turn it into monsters, and you say their entire culture is monsters, okay, we're the white guys and they're the monsters. That's obviously problematic in a host of ways. But that's not what this is. This is a project that is homespun, that's taking lots of different ideas from all over the place, including, most importantly, from people who live in the area and are directly connected to all of the myths and legends and the various stories in question, and that significantly changes it. If I were to do it, then the words cultural appropriation would be absolutely appropriate, because I am appropriating someone else's culture, and if I'm selling it, then it's for my own benefit, not to the benefit of the very people whose culture it's going from. That's almost the definition of it. This isn't. It's quite far from that. It's a completely different style of project, and it's also, relatively importantly here, at least so far at least, not being made for money, which is where appropriation really gives a proper sting, when basically you're making money off somebody else's stuff, and they get absolutely nothing from that. This is quite a different example, so I say it's not a problem. But for your own individual situation, Phil, it could very well be an issue if you're trying to make money out of it. So always, if you're trying to use some other people's cultures, bring in people from those cultures where you can, and always have sensitivity readers, because you might accidentally have completely offended an enormous chunk of people without having any awareness of it, because you used a motif or an idea or an image that you thought was super cool that actually means something to those people in a way you don't realize. And if you bring that up and you repeat it again and again and again, and then try to sell it, you are going to get people trying to shoot you for not good reasons. Killing's never a good idea, but they're most certainly going to be upset for a good reason. So yeah, being careful is always a good idea.
All right, let's get back into the presentation with the lore of the Blood Naga.
I'm actually going to bring this one up just as a small thing, because I think it's pretty much on there. Appropriation is not often the issue it's that upsets. It's exploitation, desecration that really upsets people. Yeah, indeed. Ghost of Tsushima is a brilliant game. And indeed, I remember reading a really nice review from a Japanese reviewer that basically said, why didn't we make this?
Good point.
And Sage bringing up a thing about Andy and her's version of Nippon. With
Hey,
lightning and
Sage!
things. Yeah. All right, let's carry on. We got a magic lore to get into.
All right. So, Zixa, known as Ophiomancy by elves, Potency Magic by chaos sorcerers, and Gujiao by Katayans. Zixa means a combination of things to the Hishara of Khuresh, the name the Naga and Snakemen call themselves collectively. It is tattoo-based envenomed biomanipulation, relying on script, thaumaturgy, and alchemical mastery through the Naga's own venom, tapped into living flesh, souls, and even on living objects, augmented with fragrances and sounds produced by bizarre tools of war and magic.
That is such a fucking cool concept for a lore of magic.
I'm already sold.
The Khuresh's perfected occultic fleshcraft contrasts Skaven clan molders' haphazard stitched-together look and the necrotic bloodlines used of dead flesh to create Frankenstein creatures. When the winds of magic are high, the Naga can invoke Zixa to distort and bend space, like what the White Sistrum effects had and what was happening with the Dreadmaw summoning by the Sylvanian cult. It is also a realization of Chez Elliott's idea of Snakeman sigil magic, localized to Warhammer Southeast Asia. As a language script-based magic, it begs the question, just what is Nagendera that confers such power to the serpents? Well, who was the old one of languages, with a name based off a snake entity from real-world mythology?
Look at you being clever.
Yeah. So, in any case, Zixa's name draws from the Sanskrit Zixa, which gave rise to similar terms used by hosts of other Southeast Asian languages, most commonly in Malay and Indonesian, which can mean torment, punishment, and chastisement, found in horror movie titles, usually.
Brilliant.
All right. Next up.
Damn.
Next up, we have the Panaga Samtik, the Cobra Chieftain, or Cobra Commander, as I'd like to say.
Cobra Commander. Get that.
Designed,
We have a lot of these.
designed by FuriousMing, as you can see on the artwork, and the 3D design model is made by Rabs. So the design is deliberately ostentatious to disorientate and intimidate. Ensorcelled gold amplifies their hypnotic abilities, contrasting the gold gear and accessories of the Lisbon leaders.
Fucking love it.
Yeah, this was a really fun one to work on. It's actually the first one I did actually for this project. And I mean, what's not to love? It's a cobra, arguably the best looking snakes ever, the coolest snakes, and it got 4 arms, so that's even better.
I love so much that you took the like intimidation display of the cobra, making itself as big as possible, and then made that work on people where he's like, yeah, use magic to make myself really big and scary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you notice, they got like the mutations on the I guess whatever the frills of the cobra as well. That's something kind of like the continuous like aspect of like mutation being worked into a lot of these snakesmen themselves. Because I mean, you get 2 arms one, you get 4 arms one, so there's different kind of mutation that working into the different hierarchy in the snakesmen themselves.
Brilliant.
So yeah, freaking love that.
Okay, so the default design is the King Cobra combined with the Sunbeam Snake to show off the Shaiish wind absorption that this cast of snakemen have. They're the leadership of the snakemen, and whenever they go, they absorb the latent winds of magic around Khuresh, so they take on aspects of that wind. So yeah, this one would be like a death-dealing snake, and then there'd be different types of winds depending on where they are in the region of Khuresh that they're in. So the weapons are the Indochina Makpolam, the Karambit dagger, the Chris dagger. The Warpstone fan axe that it has alludes to the large chunk of Khuresh Warpstone cache that they have in the region.
We love fan weapons. Oh, that thing is horrible. I don't like it. What is that?
What do you mean? It looks so friendly. Give it a hug.
Holy crap sticks.
First up is the generic spellcaster hero for the Naga, the Naga Kanya, or the Blood Naga Priestess, drawn by FuriousMing, the lower ranked Naga kin. They provide ritual support for the leaders. They're accompanied by these things called placids. They're called buzzer demons. They basically feed off the flesh of their hosts. Not the flesh, the blood of their hosts. And then they contrast another type of familiar that the other generic hero has. They fly around, helping them conduct experiments, and then in battle they disorientate with huge noises, and they're basically like a mix of like giant weta, crickets, and elf faces. So the design is based off the Burmese python and the weta FuriousMing, do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, just like I think this is one of the first. May have been second time that we discussed about sexy snake men or snake men. And I think we didn't end up giving them boobs.
Queen? Yeah, did you do this before I did the queen, or did I do?
I think you did the queen first, but I think the queen is more like hunched over.
Yeah, it's more like
we weren't going to be
monstrous.
sexy anyways, right?
Yeah, we quickly discussed it, but this was the one I was like, oh,
yeah,
maybe.
But it's like a priestess. It can be sexy, maybe.
The important thing about these ones is that they do kind of have a glamour, that they will sometimes appear as a more comely maiden to trick people either locally or from overseas.
It's a classic story.
Yeah, and then they'll reveal the terrifying nature that they really have and ensnare them. Yeah, that sort of thing.
I gave them bigger hips as a compromise, but everyone is happy.
we got the monster fuckers in the audience. They reveal the snake form and they'd be like, "Oh, this is better."
Yeah, and the insect one, the plastic. I think the idea was just what I had in mind: just put hair on things that shouldn't have hair, and I think that automatically makes things creepy.
I agree very wholeheartedly.
100%.
Like just imagine anything, and you put that shouldn't have hair, like an orange. You put hair on it.
Yeah, in a lot of Southeast Asian mythology, hair is actually a big component of the occult, and it's like voodoo magic, where they take hair and then they do things with it that actually harm the person.
The other version of put hair where it's not supposed to be is put holes where it's not supposed to be. That also freaks people out.
Yes, that is also very true.
Fact.
Yeah. So the
just because I have to bring it up. Why does it potato? Oh, fire snake.
Yeah. So the design was based off the Burmese python and the weta, and also the pellucid myth from Malay mythology.
Don't know that one.
Next up, we have the Panaga Wira. So this is the melee captain hero with the buffing equipment. They spin this whip around. It's called a bull roarer in English, and it produces this buzzing, horrible rotating sound that can be used to deflect lightning, cast spells, communicate over vast distances. And the name is actually kind of a pun. It's like a combination of English "were" and Wira from Indonesian and Malay, which is derived from Vira, which means hero. So, hero that spins things. So it's accompanied by a Bajang familiar, contrasting the female counterpart, which does basically the same thing, except this one, based off a Siamese cat, they actually kind of release a sort of like white phosphorus gas around them in battle. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, I was gonna say that cat looks like it has a fucking leech for a face.
Oh yes, very much so.
Yeah, I was about to say it looks like
I took a lamprey. I was just like, all right, you want a lamprey cat? All right, cool. Let's make it. You do not want to get licks from this cat because it will tear off your skin and your soul, I think.
Well,
So it's based off the snake itself is based off the Siamese Russell's viper or the chain viper, and more puns for that. The familiar is the Siamese cat and the tiger leech combined with the bajang of Malay myth. So
if you go back to like the previous page just real quick, originally, like basically the headpiece, I was taking reference from sort of like the Thai dance mask,
the
like
con dance.
Con mask. Yeah, the con mask basically. So it's like I was like molding it to sculpt into more of like a snake-like face instead of like human face, and then so like it becomes more of a protective headpiece.
I gotta say, I love that there's about 4 layers of chain/whip pun on this thing.
All right, next one, our stealth assassin support hero, the Filed One, a parasitic serpent that hides within and walks among humans. There's an infiltrator form you can see on the right, drawn by RY, and there's like the local rouser battle form in the center. The thing is, when within Khuresh itself in the peninsula, they take the role of like the preachers of the serpent cults that they scatter around humanity. So they get the humans to be at least loyal or not too rebellious against the snakemen, and then they kind of provide a representation that yes, at a certain point you can ascend and become a snake if certain things are met and certain objectives are fulfilled. Outside, when they infiltrate, say in unscrupulous places like Marienburg or the city of Spires or even Nagaroth, they would be the ones in charge of these serpent cults. So yeah, this would probably be the one that will be in Sylvania doing their thing. Yeah.
It's a thin man from XCOM.
Yeah, that art of it bursting out of the dude's mouth and his head just sags is nasty.
Yeah, the bursting out of the human head is 100% Warhammer. I love that.
If you zoom in, if like you zoom more into like the face, even on the human version, you can see like the skin is not fitting properly. It's like sort of like folding down. It's like sort of like drooping a little bit. It's not molded on. It's not properly on there. So it's like they're very creepy up close. But like from afar, you'd be like, oh, it's just a guy. When you get up close, it's like there's something wrong here.
Excellent.
Yes. So the snake reference was the elephant trunk snake. This is specifically known to have loose skin, so that's how it's connected to the thing. Yeah. And then the attire is based on, well, in Serpent Rouser form is based off the Minahasa Kabasaran war dancers. So it's red with proliferation of bones, evoking the flaying or shedding aspect of the snake, and the weapons are the Kampilan. Next up, we have the humans, the Fang Trials. These are basically the Chaff infantry, based on the Khmer Empire, Ayutthaya, the Pagan of Burma, conscripted levies. Their weapons are based off the Mak Polam, again, the Parang Machete, the Sumbit Blowpipe of Borneo, Philippines, and Sulawesi. So the thing with the Fang Trials is that that's the name given to the human levies by the Snakemen and Naga themselves. They call themselves Amtan or Oath-bounded. They're tenacious but tormented, manipulated by serpent overlords. Many willingly serve the serpents, if only to appease them away from targeting their families and clans first. So they often bear mutations due to magic saturation in Khuresh. So this is a point to kind of address the cultural appropriation issue. So there is a existing human element to Khuresh that is kind of rebellious towards the serpents, so it's not all kind of evil. There are rebel clusters supported by the law-aligned Maga, one of them, and there are existing truthsayers or Amazon analog traditions hidden in the Khureshi highlands, fighting against the Chaos Serpents for centuries. And then there's others who turn to vampirism when they can't actually compete with the snakes. And yeah.
Vampirism seems like a fairly obvious connection because of the blood focus that's often dropped onto the Naga as well. So you would probably want to see that reflected. Really nice that you're considering that. I think I like pretty much all of this, particularly given that you've got what appears to be a relationship between the humans and the snake men that's not entirely sympathetic, but not necessarily antagonistic, depending upon where they are. And I imagine different locals having different views. I do have one question. Are many of the humans in the area as it stands chaos aligned, or do they have their own gods? Warhammer, for example, is known for having a vast variety of gods for humanity. Humans appear to be almost singularly geared towards almost spinning up their own gods from nothing, whether it's a god of that local hill or the god of that tree or the god of the stream that they happen to be walking by that morning. There's always some sort of local spirit that humans are often going with. Are we looking to steer away from that, or do you think your human communities are quite closely aligned to chaos in the same way that, say, many of the northern tribes are up in, for example, just the northern chaos wastes, or even as we move into the north of Norska?
There's some similarities to be drawn with the Norskans and how some of them are not necessarily fully chaos corrupted. In my thought, the humans, they do have certain local deities and local spirits that they pray to and such, but the vast majority is that they've been indoctrinated by the Naga for so long, ever since the Great Cataclysm until now. So there is a kind of very hard external force pressing down on all these beliefs, suppressing most of these. So most of them, because of basing off of Rob Sanders' quote, the hammer and the anvil, they are kind of compelled to worship the snakeman, the Naga, to at least not get, the Naga could just
worse for them.
Yeah, they could just pull back their defenses of a settlement, and then they let the wild animals in Khuresh and the wild creatures just come in and ruin them and all that. Yeah. So I
will say two things I really love about this is I love the parallel between the Naga trying to suppress local deities just like Cathay does, but they're doing it from two very different angles, where the Cathayan dragons are trying to eliminate what they perceive as the negative influence of gods and chaos, whereas the Naga are from a chaos angle, which is probably a parallel the dragons would not be comfortable with anyone throwing in their face. That they are like the Naga in this sense. The second thing I really like is I really love how you mentioned here in the second bullet point that even if the humans are genuine loyalists to the serpents, it's not always from a place of, oh yeah, we like them. It's a place from, this is how I protect the people I love, is that I work for these horrible things to keep them away from our communities.
Yeah, exactly. It's really because between them, because they don't really worship them out of genuine loyalty. It's just out of fear. Basically, and they're very to them. It's just like, oh, here is a cultural, like a wooden figure or something, or like let's say a serpent. It's like, oh, worship this serpent and you're going to be protected. Yeah, technically that is right, but the true detail behind that is that you're being manipulated, you're going to be used for something probably quite a future. So,
yeah, it's also tied to the passage from Monstrous Arcanum that says that humans are hunted across Khuresh, but I gave it a bit more nuance to it.
Yeah,
that's right.
I like this in particular as well, because you get the idea that the Chaos Gods are the Snake Man gods. They're the Naga gods. And there's going to be a lot of humans who are worshipping along the edges of that and gaining all of the horrendous outcomes that come along with that mutation and et al. But that the lizardmen, to a degree, they're better than the humans as far as they're concerned, would perceive humans worshipping the Chaos Gods a little bit like ants worshipping their gods. It's almost irrelevant. They are prey to be hunted down or used or whatever. And I could see then getting a really lovely set of different human communities, all of whom have different relationships with the gods of the Naga as they'd often perceive them. Some of whom will believe that maybe they're their gods, others of whom will just worship their own gods, some in secret, some not in secret. It gives you lots of potential different types of community throughout the entirety of Khuresh, all of whom would manifest their versions of their religion in different ways. And that, I think, is ultimately Warhammer. Warhammer rarely is a one-shoe-fit-all answer, although the army list that you might get over on, say, the Warhammer Fantasy Battle side tends to go one shoe fits all. The second that you move into the roleplay game, they say, you see that shoe? It's one of 50 shoes. And you realize there's an awful lot more going on than just simply humans are chaos, lizardmen are, well, snake men, pardon me, are chaos. They work together. Yay, look, see, they've got humans with them. Then you look at the depth and realize it's much deeper. Yeah, I quite like that. It's
Let's carry on.
I was just going to say, the link to a previous point from Andy, it's about sort of like every Warhammer faction has to fight everyone else, but at the same time, each faction has to be able to fight itself. I mean, there's even civil war rules for every fight. Even the lizardmen, you're like, oh, it's a practice fight. When you've got grudges going back like thousands of years, or if it was the orcs, it was like a grudge going back like a day ago because this is
totally.
Yep. Model credit to Co, and the weapons and equipment credit to SaintCorn for this.
Excellent.
Next up, the Toral Puppets, the Skirmisher Light Infantry. These are basically what the Naga did to the forest goblins who live near them. So they turn these things, they use parasitic horsehair worms, and they embed them into the forest goblins, and then they turn them into like these imp and baby-like servants, and then they use them. Yeah, so they use them as skirmisher infantry. They use them to watch their borders. They help them with certain tasks. Yeah, and they use them to also fight the forest goblins themselves and wreak havoc. They spread misinformation amongst the tribe and keep them sedated most of the time. Yeah, these are based on.
They're horrible.
Mhm.
Yeah, earlier when Andy was asking about like goblins and orcs, I was like, well,
So yeah, these are based on the Toyol of Malay and Indonesian myth, the Kumantong of Thai myth, and the Tianak of Filipino myth. We kind of reduced the grossness of what the real myth would actually look like, because most of them use like human infants for the things. Yeah, these are actually based. These myths are based off like human infants and abortions and such, and then they use them as like talismans in the case of case of Khmer.
Yeah, I very much tried to make them fit within that sort of like ugly, cute, like sort of like niche, where it's like it's definitely ugly and grotesque, but also it's like it's a little bit cute.
We call it the green skin effect. It's the same thing happened to Squigs.
Yeah, the insectoid, yucky bit of it though. I love that.
So if I remember,
look at all those little growths and blah.
So they also store them in jars, and so they're like usually just like in jars of just like black goo, and then like they burst out of these jars and just like, hey, braidworm goblin.
I will say I love this so much because this ties into something that like I know Andy and me have heard a lot about on previous Lorebeards streams, where people ask about like, oh, since greenskins are like mushrooms, are there like ways that they can be parasitized by other entities? And this also ties really well into like the greenskins we see in the Orc Slayer Gotrek and Felix novel, where the greenskins are literally being puppeted by other forces.
Yeah, by the sleeper.
This is fantastic.
I almost used like the brainworms as like little like gnome hats. Like that's how I sort of felt about like the silhouette. It's like almost like if you squint, it's like it's almost a little cap on there.
Yeah, I love that you can see that. It looks like they're wearing little hats, but it's horrible parasites.
Yeah, and it's part of, I read it wrong. It's horsehair worm type things. That's horrible. I love that. I actually love that. That's just great.
Mm-hmm. So don't worry about the middle one. This is just a recreation from Wikipedia, so probably not NSFW. Anyway, moving on. So you have the Spitting Naya, the stealth missile monstrous infantry, the rangers of the Snakemen. They hunt the beastmen, the Skaven, and the mutants throughout Khuresh. So when designing these guys, instead of just going, we need a range Snakeman. Instead of just going, okay, these guys are just the Sarpine armor. We went like, okay, what kind of situation would they be in when they're surrounded by all these beastmen in the jungles? They have their own pockets of civilization. They would have like a special troop of like Katashan-like guys with machetes, Rambo Snakemen going out hunting them and then gathering trophies. Yeah. So that's where the idea comes from.
That's fantastic.
You can see if you zoom in a little bit, you can see like I have like little sketches of like different trophy heads they might have from like the different mutants and like beastmen they might have hunted. So you get a little bit of like variation in like sort of like, oh, what's my favorite kill? I'll take trophy from that one.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Freaking awesome. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Based off the monocled Spitting Cobra. There's actually a in-game model done by Code I haven't put in here, but it's in his art station that you can see.
Excellent.
Next, the Panaga Raksaka, the Royal Guard, the elite hybrid monstrous infantry. They have absolute loyalty. They're fearless. They can regenerate from basically a single cell, and they have living ammunition with their the bows and arrows. So this is the design made by FuriousMing. It paid homage to Graham Davis's Snethan Chaos Snakeman that he selected using the two-faced Hanba from Die Hard Miniatures.
Yeah, I think the design-wise, like for the hat, like I think it's kind of allude to like Warhammer, like having like these giant hats, helmets with cool motifs.
Pretonia hat.
With skulls on
Basically,
them.
name any Warhammer faction. They most likely have some cool hats. So
Chaos
kind of
Dwarfs.
like try to, exactly.
Biggest hat wins.
Yeah, so try to throw a bit of that in. And I mean, a lot of Southeast Asian culture, they naturally already have these kind of really cool headgears already. So that works itself nicely in. And the armor itself is kind of based more on like, I believe it's kind of Burmese. Yeah, Burmese warrior armor. I think it's like kind of more in the turn of the 18th, 17th century, where they start incorporating more chain mails in there as well.
Can you, what do you mean by living ammunition?
So basically, when they shoot these arrows, the arrows will burrow into the enemy, and then they'll raise. It's kind of similar to the Eldari weapons that they have. What do they call that again? The
shirking catapults.
The one where they shoot it into the target, and then it just renders them from the inside out.
Gross.
The flesh borers from the Tyranids.
Yeah, that one. So that's how the idea is. We actually kind of went through a long process of like thinking, okay, these guys are going to be elite. They're going to be hybrid infantry. They're going to have like the polearm magic attacks and the bows. How are we going to actually portray them? Which Ming did fantastically.
Is that what you're referencing? The Harlequin's Kiss, where it puts the
monofilament
wire.
The monofilament wire.
Harlequin's Kiss, the monofilament wire.
Yeah, exactly.
Around on the inside, turns your body to soup. Which is proper horrible. With your skin just going, slop. Good.
There's also the Night Spinners the Eldar have, I think that's their artillery.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Again, with the monofilament wires. Love it.
So these are based off the archer references from the Sang Sensei myths from Laos and the Blood Python. Next up, we have the Spec Prowlers. These are ethereal, monstrous infantry. They emerged around the time of the Eastern Shadow War between Be'lakor and the Shadow Dragons faction in the distant past. This is, again, a fan creation kind of thing, but it kind of allows us to explore the time when Be'lakor was in ascendance in the East after the Great Cataclysm. So the design alludes to Warhammer gnomes because of the
I would just like to say that anyone that alludes to anything that I write is obviously perfect. Without any shadow of a doubt, the best thing that's come so far.
Such an easy win.
So these are based off the shadow puppets from Malaysian and Indonesian myths. So and the Pisa from Thai myth. So yeah, they're basically just the horrible things that lurk around the shadows of Khuresh with Ubu magic.
Those claws.
Yeah, the SaintCorn credit for the weapons on the left. Next up, we have the Biowak hunting packs with acid missile. They're the attack dogs of the Naga. They're the analog of the Lustrian salamanders and razordons. The name Biowak actually is like another variation of Biawak, which is monitor lizard in Malay and Indonesian and Filipino. They're basically they clean up all the excess biomass once the Nagas are done experimenting and chopping things up and all that. There's like a larger, mature variant that has Vanguard deployment because they kind of glide towards it. It's like the ancient salamander, much bigger. You can see it from RY's.
Yeah, there's a little sketch of it down there on the right. And then you can see it like sort of stretching out the wings there.
And instead of spitting acid, these ones, they kind of lose the acid spitting, and instead they just spit out a chunk of this pellet, just like Komodo dragons. And they spit it out like this kind of cannonball full of gunk and meat and metal of the things that they consumed and all that, and it becomes kind of like a cannonball.
In case you're not aware, real-life Komodo dragons are like, their bite is not exactly toxic, but very poisonous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I really, really love the idea that I love how much you're dialing into that the Khuresh rely on bioengineering for all of their issues, where instead of
Mhm.
having like some kind of mechanical or magical way to clean up excess bodies, clean up their laboratories and stuff, they just make an acid spitting reptile that runs around just vomiting on everything to get it melted down and out of the way.
And what
Yeah.
goes down got to come back up.
Yep.
Okay.
We should probably take this moment to check through a bunch of the super chats to make sure they don't run out of
right,
control
all
in the background. So let's
Cool,
take
cool,
a brief aside.
Ricky Chapman asks,
Have a
are there any dragon ogres located in Khuresh that work with the Naga?
Not at this time, no, because most of them are from the north, right? So yeah, maybe
Yeah, north
there might
mountains,
be.
a lot of mountains. That being said,
Mhm.
your lightning port could be an interesting place to have a dragon ogre thing going on because they do love where there are storms.
They damn do.
Donoman, are all the snakes you use as inspiration from Southeast Asia? Just asking because there's a snake from Iran called the spider-tailed horned viper that has a growth on its tail that looks like a spider, which is wiggled to attract birds for grabbing them.
Ah, yes, yeah. Actually, that particular species we did consider to use as one of it, but actually I used it as one of the legendary lords that you'll see in the future. But yeah, most of them are from Southeast Asia or Australia. So yeah, we prioritize those first before we get to the other ones. Those are more for the special characters.
That was the glamour one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. Tibble, 47 KKR. The presentation is awesome. Please don't go too quickly to make up for the host being their slow yapping selves. Well, thanks. Rude.
Just how it works with us, I'm sorry to say.
Man, if the Panaga Some Deck ever go to Albion, they should have a Cobra meeting. Apologize to Andy as the only person on screen to get that button.
There's
UK government has Cobra meetings.
There's one of the joke lore stories I was writing. It was about it's sort of a St. Patrick individual.
I was going to say BloodRaven would get that.
Yeah, well, I'm from Ireland, so I'd slightly get a knock up way. But yeah, I don't. No, there's like one joke story I made. It was kind of like a St. Patrick reference, like Hyperzo, because in the old world playing they mentioned Hyperzo was
they have.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like,
Very
oh, that'd be perfect. There's another one which is a snake and ladders reference, but I'll leave that for.
Good old snakes and ladders. Elemental exposure. You mentioned vampirism. Would you have a unique vampiric bloodline in the area? And if so, do you have any ideas of what traits they'd have?
We kind of do. There's actually a bunch of different vampire bloodlines that I thought there would be around Khuresh in small numbers. I'm not quite sure of the pronunciation. So most of the bloodlines now have been kind of fleshed out or confirmed, even the Jade-Blooded of Arakte. So there's one more called Matmesi.
Yeah, Matmesi.
Yeah. So it's kind of like in certain lore, when some of them are kind of dubiously canonical. It says that they're kind of vicious or insectoid, something like that. Yeah, we're thinking of like including that in parts of Khuresh.
Yeah, I think that's Steve Darlington's write up on them.
It's that's Steve's. Steve D's. And I would be sorely tempted, given the strong relations between the Blood Naga, to take one of the vampire lines and properly fuck with it. Have the Naga properly mess them up and do something horrific.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could functionally create an 8th bloodline because of the abilities the Naga have.
Yeah. I would be
that's true,
sorely tempted to do that because we're dealing with a new type of flesh, which is unliving flesh that regenerates. This is something that's going to appeal, something that's going to potentially have use, particularly if it can be then repurposed and reused in other ways. There's going to be a poor, sad vampire who gets experimented on in the most horrific ways and gets possibly turned into something far, far worse. And if you because of the nature of how vampires recreate themselves, you could end up creating this weird little spawny circle somewhere. It doesn't need to be a core component of an army, but it could certainly be something that's dropped into a lore box or here's a piece of horrendous lore about this horrendous creature that has been created out of these things and stalks the jungles and literally takes the blood out and possibly transports it back so it can be used for others. So they come back with big blood sacks or something like that. The more horrific you can make it, the more fun it is. But take the benefits of the vampire and then use it to turn into something that's useful for the snake men and what they're doing.
Well, there is
Sorry, I just imagine like a vampire of Snake Santa just carrying like a sack of
There actually is a Filipino mythological creature that kind of does that. And Vietnamese, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Oh, I'd be tempted
It was something
to
I
riff
was
in it.
considering, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be quite a fun riff.
And this blood magic, nothing but binds, so it fit quite well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nagwa1992 says, Pale Covenant Marga. I like the sound of them. I revile chaos normally. Order Tide!
Mm-hmm.
Donoman, this makes me want to play the Civ 5 Indonesia war theme. The most badass music in Civ 5 series is up there with whole smarts for me. The war theme, on a related note, was 47 KKR. Was Udin Mas an influence for the music you made?
Parts of it, yeah, actually. We did give Lorebeards some of the examples of the music that we provided, heavily using Gulintang, or rather, you would know as certain people know as gamelan. It would be heavily inspired by the sort of ensemble from Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Very cool. Face Flaya, now Khuresh. Good week for Lorebeards. It's a distressing week for Lorebeards. Ricky Chapman asks, is there a version of the Tick Belong? I believe the answer is yes.
Yes, it's coming.
Sign of the Emperor, do they have some kind of Prometheus-style black goo that works as a primary primor or mutagen for the flesh working they do, or is it more of a magical system akin to the...
Semiche?
There we go. From Vampire the Masquerade / War.
Yeah, that's actually the thing that's like in the goo that RY mentioned in that jar that the 12 puppets have. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that they have. Yeah.
Okay, we got 3 more quick ones. Phil, one thing I love about this project is the attention to narrative details. The Nagas having human worshippers is a fitting tie into the actual Nagas. I really love the toil puppets. It's great to see goblins in the roster of the Nagas. It makes them fit the Warhammer world that much more organically.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Downman, just an FYI, there's a real weapon kind of like that blender thing. It's called the Hellfire R9X, and it penetrates the rooftop of enemy vehicles where 6 blades pop out as it rapidly spins, putting people
crap.
inside. Humans are fucked up. Yes.
Why?
That's some Warhammer shit.
Yeah, that just sounds like 40k bullshit.
My goodness.
Sign of the Emperor, have you / would you make a monster base on the lizard that shoots blood from its eyes? Oh, the spiny lizard.
Yeah. I would have, but unfortunately, because it's not really a Southeast Asian species, we didn't really prioritize it. But maybe in the future.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's over here in the States. All right, carrying on. We're all caught up.
All right. So next up, we have the main chariot unit for the Khureshi, the Chirake chariots. Chirake is Thai for crocodile. They're the melee buffer and debuffer chariots. They frontal charge and then they stay there fighting around. They have Sapa riders, which actually haven't been put into all of these model credits for Ko, and then the unit card for Flimp. So when they're in the thick of it, they release alchemical incense, and then that would have a variety of effects depending on what subfaction or what purpose that they would have. And then the hooks on the back actually kind of harvest the fallen biomass after the battle's over, and if they're not destroyed. So yeah,
that's so
Yay
great
for hooky biomass collectors.
So they're based off the Thai rod. I'm sorry.
No, you got this. It's in this slide. You got it.
Yeah. So it's based off the Thai rod and the Sanskrit Ratha, the chariots. You can see the double umbrellas in the back. So the crocodiles are actually kind of devolved Croxigors that the Naga actually kind of captured, and then they kind of turned them into basically draft creatures to humiliate them, basically. So they resemble the obsolete depiction of the Caprosuchus, the boar croc, the one that runs, that was thought to run really fast. So that's how it came about.
So I was gonna
horrific.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that because, remember how you guys were talking about the representation of the lizardmen within Khuresh. They have a very complicated history with a lot of hatred in there. So they really, really do not like the lizardmen, and you will see more examples of them repurposing lizardmen on purpose out of spite as their greatest haters in their magic and experiments and stuff.
I will say that this is what the absolutely terrible design of the Total War Croxigors deserves. This is their natural end, and I am fully in support in it.
All right. Next up, we have the Maze Racer chariots, the missile chariot with bounce spells and Vanguard deployment. Yes, so these are the beastmen, or at least some of the beastmen. localized in Khuresh. So we wanted to create an occult chariot and then show off the local beastmen. They basically the Snakeman Rangers, the Spitting Naya, they go around and then certain times they will capture these werehorses based off the Tikbalang of Filipino myth, and they'll like take a hair out of them and then they'll compel them with arcane powers to serve as draft creatures for their chariots. And these are like the leaders of the Spitting Naya parties. They rumble around the jungle, and the special thing about these beastmen, based off the Tikbalang, is that they teleport or they can create like little rifts, and then they just jump around the forest, like, just careening with these chariots behind them. And then on the battlefield, they'll skirt around the edges, and then they'll just constantly just zip around, creating these rifts that kind of hamper or disorientate or just like randomly drag people into completely different areas and then pop back out. And yeah, that's how
I will say that's such a brilliant way to answer the thing of like a chariot in like a massive jungle place, and you go, oh well, they teleport. You go, oh okay.
Shit.
It's magic. We ain't gotta explain shit.
Holy crap!
Oh, those things are terrifying, dude. I love so much that you went like greenskins. We got a localized version. Beastmen. We got a localized version. This is fantastic.
Thank you, Sotek. So credits to modders Co and Flimp for the in-game model and the design, the unit card designs. So they're obviously based off the Tikbalang myth from Filipino mythology. The name they call Orobagor in game because I didn't just want to just call them Tikbalang 1-to-1. So they're based off this demon from the Ars Goetia called Orobas. So it's like you know how all these beastmen have a gore suffix at the back, and they're kind of based off a Western sort of idea with satyrs and such. So there was kind of like a conjoining of all of that kind of idea into it. They don't really use any crafted weapons. They're imbued with Ulgu, so they just slash and bite, and then all of that will just like transport bits of you somewhere or something like that. And they have Vanguard deployment. They spread fear. Yeah. So
I do have one just general observation. If you're tying them into the gore, I would probably put horns on them somewhere. Given that that's the core component of the gore society is the horns. I'm not saying you should, because you're basing them on a different thing. Just it's something to definitely consider if you're making a specific tie to the gore as a whole. Because their society is based upon, even if it's just tiny little horns that are inside their manes, thus we don't need to depict them. But hey, job's already done, they're in there. Woohoo! But having some form of that would work, I think, quite well, particularly if you get a special character from that at some point, which has an enormous pair of horrible horns coming down from it or something similar.
Or maybe this Naga have deliberately dehorned him to...
I think that's a really good idea.
That could be a brilliant explanation as well.
I think that in some respects is even cooler, because that speaks to the nature and the story of the Naga. It tells a story by the very nature of it and what they're attempting to do. So yeah,
that's great.
That.
Yeah, I actually love the idea that they used to have horns, but the Naga took it away from them.
I was thinking of two ideas actually. One is that their horns have been removed, as you're saying, as in they've been forced to turn into beastmen phrase, or the reins are tied around their horns permanently to enforce that they are permanently locked to the chariots and have no chance of escaping it. Again,
that's also horrendously cool.
Right.
Yeah. One other thing I just want to add is just working on this project. One of the best part is just coming to know these crazy like creatures, and because I'm interested in mythologies and stuff, but I've never heard anything about Filipino mythology. And then when 47K told me about this concept, I was like, what the? There's a werehorse? And I started looking it up online. I was like, holy shit, this thing is terrifying.
No,
that's just the joy of finding out these crazy myths and creatures that existing and trying to incorporate into a Warhammer way.
The Philippines has just such a weird roster of crazy monsters. Like in art school, like half of my friends are Filipino for some reason, and like every once in a while they would just bring up something, and I was like, "Wait, what? What? No, say that again."
There's a much scarier one, but that's coming up.
Oh yeah. I was like, vampire woman that splits its. Okay, all right, cool. All right. That's coming up later. That's coming later.
Yeah. All right. Next up. So this is the beginning of the artillery for the Naga. This is the Dread China Gong Alta. The spell casts sonic artillery, causing pulverizing kinetic damage and crumbles constructs from a distance with magic. You can see that the Naga actually it would be a panaga in game, and they'll play the gongs that look like teeth around it, dripping with ichor, and then these little guys on the side tied to they act like speakers. They get mutated to basically act like speakers. So
I was gonna say the dude's tied onto the top of it. Yeah.
If you zoom in, you can see like they've got like holes on their bellies.
Yeah,
basically.
I see them in their bellies.
Also, quick aside, I don't know if you're going to mention this as well, but like the intention was for basically the first of these were originally taken and carved from the jaws of Sky Titans.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's sick. I will say
cool. And it's got a strong. Oh, you go first.
I was gonna say I love the way you immediately go in and say these were originally intended and designed that they're disruptors, that they slam into things that are held together by magic and disrupt and cause them to fall apart, tearing apart constructs, which is such a perfect thing of like, oh well, they go up against Grand Cathay, who rely very heavily on powerful magical constructs, so that the Naga have designed this bio-engineering weapon that's meant to obliterate like the Jade Lions and the Terracotta Sentinels and stuff is brilliant.
Yeah, while he's saying clever stuff, all I can think is Mad Max Warhammer.
Yes! Yeah, exactly.
Let's go.
The Doof Wagon, the Doof Wagon was actually one of the inspirations for this unit too. Yeah.
Oh hell yes! Crap! Did not mean to bring that up.
Dinoman said the same thing.
You're just brilliant. Huge happy smile over here.
I also had to like figure out like, all right, how would you comfortably have a snake person just be on artillery? And I was like, all right, just have like a hammock, just have a sling, and then they just sort of like rest there and then lean forward. Easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So the crescent motif is sinuous like a serpent. It's also implied as an in-universe kind of influence of the Oblivion serpent, as they call it, Slanesh. I actually have a soundbite of this unit, and Koak has actually animated the speakers to kind of reverberate in game, but I don't have it at this point. Yeah, the lights actually all light up individually too, so it's very cool. So this is based off the Patcon of the Mon people from Indochina. The Khureshi gongs, they serve a purpose like power stones for the Khuresh. Next up, we have the Frenzaccord Zither Altar, the spellcaster sonic artillery that slices and dices from a distance with magic. So these are, as you can see, they have the Nagakanya in them. They compel shedding of flesh, turning human chaff infantry, the Fang Trolls, into callow, doomed berserker infantry that kind of die within a few days. Because it's like, Khuresh doesn't really have like a very big front line of things. Even their infantry is meant to kind of skirt around and attack from the flanks. So this is the unit that kind of reinforces the Fang Trolls, and then it's like, oh, things are going really bad, and they can't really hold. We'll just turn them all into berserker infantry to hold the line a little longer before other stuff happens. So there's also a subtle Slaneshi crescent influence to it. It's more sinuous, so it's closer to Slanesh with the pelvic girdle that my wife kind of inspired and drew for Ming for this one. Yeah, so as you said in previous Lorebeards, Andy and Sotek, the music aspect of Warhammer Fantasy is kind of underutilized. It's kind of not really, especially turned into like weaponry. So I thought it would be really cool for the Snakemen and the Naga to, instead of having mostly traditional forms of artillery, they have like these sound weapons that they can use.
Perfect.
All I can say is, I am getting slowly but surely more convinced that a sexy lizardman is not a bad idea. Sexy snake man, pardon me. I mean, how can we go wrong? It's perfect.
Is it the way she's just resting there?
Yeah, it's just the way she's lounging. So
yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love to have a lounging,
attitude.
sexy snake lady?
Attitude is the sexiest thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I got the hammock going. I got the little cushion seat.
Yeah, I will say that I continue to be so deeply impressed with how you're taking things that when you think like artillery, so many people will look at it and go, oh, well, it has to be mechanical, or it has to have like engineering elements, and saying, no, the Naga bioengineer, everything is made of bits and parts, and even the way the weapon works, it's utilizing how like magic interacts with bodies as the magical force hits them, even if the magic is utilizing like a concept of sound waves, like the fact that it's got this giant pelvis like shape on the back is horrific. Great.
Yeah, and the strings are also kind of like based off the fibers, the muscle fibers of things. Yeah. So this, yeah, originally it was based off the Cambodian pin harp. It turned into a pelvic girdle to evoke a rebirth kind of visual connection to the callow mutating spell, and also the slicing effect, the distant slicing effect, is also based off the two Zitter players from Kung Fu Hustle.
One of the best movies ever made.
So good.
Hong Kong represent.
Oh yeah.
Hustle. Yes.
All right, next up we have.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
It's like well, what was it called? Macra or something like that.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, we'll get to that in a bit, but yeah, this drawn by FuriousMing is the Makor Fang launcher. It's the missile, the main missile siege monster, or a main monster that the Khuresh civilization have. They're venomous. They are amphibious. They have a. Usually, the snake men will take this venomous spine that comes out of their tusks and then turn that into ammunition for their ballistas that they mount on the back. And then, yeah, there's going to be like a feral howderless variant, and then there's like the ballista on its own, used by snakemen on foot and kind of thing. It's based off the Makara, as you know, from Hindu Buddhist legends and iconography. It's usually more tied with Indian mythology, but Southeast Asia actually adopted it, and then they further build upon the legends, and then they put it all sorts of statuary and artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very common over here. Sorry. There's the Khmer Champa elephant-mounted ballista that it's based off on, because we didn't want to go, okay, they have a elephant artillery, and then it's just normal elephant. We wanted something a bit more spicy.
But you kind of have to have an elephant rider in a Southeast Asian faction.
You just got
Yeah.
Yep. And then FuriousMing brilliantly added the Siamese fighting fish aspect to its design. I had the cone snail to it. And then its gait and its overall body structure is kind of based off the Warhammer Merworm.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Fucking awesome.
Next up, our iconic mascot unit for Khuresh. This is...
Look at that thing.
Yeah. This is the Krasab Haruspex, the cursed, madness-spreading, damage-over-time monster influenced by Nurgle, made from cursed failure nagas, essentially. So they float around like jellyfish around the wilderness Khuresh, and then they would go into villages, they would feed off on new births and all that, and then during times of war or campaigns, the Naga would go and wrangle these guys up, and then they'll put like these crowns you can see, like the golden pieces. These are control apparati. They'll wrangle them, and then they'll bring them to the battlefield, and then they put them ahead of the army, and then the sheer thing, the horror of the thing will just imprint on people's minds, and then they go crazy. Oh, it's like the Jabber's life, but
I was gonna say it's like
Jabber Slice, similar mechanics. Now I love that. I can't express how much I love the look of this thing.
Yeah, I think when we're designing this, we're just going all out, like not holding back on how disgusting it's gonna look. It's just dial it up, like as gross as it can be.
Yep. That tentacle mouth thing that's coming out like a long leach, and also is
it's just got its organs hanging out of it.
Saggy way. Oh, it's just great, and all the hanging organs. It brings to mind so many horrendous creatures that I have read as I've made my way through various myth books, and often are avoided by Warhammer, who tend to go for almost iconic either Western things or things that everyone in the West already knows. And yeah, love it. I adore it, in fact. This is great.
Cool.
As Dragon Magic nicely, I think, accurately says, thanks. I hate it. Brilliant.
So yeah, the in-game model credits to Urgat for making it, and Ko for animating it. The unit card credit to Flimp. This thing is based off, a lot of people would know as the Panangalan, or the Ap, or the Krasu. It has a whole bunch of different names. It's one of the most common mythological horror creatures across the entire Southeast Asia, Indochina and maritime Southeast Asia. So it's basically the floating head with entrails dangling off of it. So we just added like snakes and all that, and turned it into like an actual Warhammer, like a believable Warhammer monster. Yeah.
I'm really liking your adaptation of it, because it's not where I would have gone, but I wish I would have, because I like it. it's a really nice direction. I've drawn one of these in the past for a completely different job a bajillion years ago, and I'm pretty sure it was the Casu, I think, that I was drawing, and I just adore this. This is great.
Yeah, props to FuriousMing for designing it. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
It's a fun one for sure.
Big smile
Next up,
here.
the
shit,
Salonak
sticks.
Pyre Naga, yeah. The anti-large, actually-breathing, burrowing siege monster, the upgraded Dreadmaw. Now, this one tunnels under Khuresh. Khuresh has actually a very deep, multi-layered, eldritch kind of underworld, kind of similar to Nagaroth, but even more messed up. These things inhabit this one and around this area and around the giant lakes around the interior of Khuresh. And then in times of battle, they'll be herded and called forth, some as mounts for the lesser Blood Naga, and they'll just barrel through the mountains of heaven towards Cathay, or they'll barrel through underneath the sea into other places like the Isles of Elithis or to Ind and such. And then when they get to the battlefield, they'll spear the giant monsters or constructs of the enemy army with their basically hot blade on their forehead, and then they'll spit out fire. Some versions of it have like plasma fire, but yeah.
I love so much that you didn't just go with, oh, they breathe fire, but leaning more heavily into that manipulation of the Naga with the winds of, no, they're conduits of Akshi. Like they vomit out raw Akshi, which of course would appear like fire, but is worse in a lot of ways.
I
Yeah,
have
so
nothing to
they
say other than fuck, you're gonna love it. It's just
So
great. That's awesome.
So like the Dreadmaw, these are kind of like the inner defense. The Dreadmaws will be like the outer defense of Khuresh, where they don't let people in, and these are like the inner defense that they have around within the peninsula itself, and also the tip of the spear when they invade. So they in-game credits to Ko and the unit card to Flimp. Ko actually made an amazing flamethrower animation that it has in the game, where it just turns around and burns it. It's all bespoke, completely customized.
I'm going to say it
yeah.
looks fucking incredible.
It does. I love it.
This is based off the reticulated python with the golden child morph in real life, and the Firenak of Thai iconography you can see across entirely of Thailand. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that one. That's cool.
Yeah, this was a really cool one to work on, and I think like we're adding some of the python mouth on it so that it kind of like splits open. Like Dreadmaw is obviously the base for it, but kind of like a more monstrous feel, so that because the emphasis is on the mouth is where all the fire is coming out of. So we also added like some little spikes on his belly. The thinking is like, but if he's gonna be burrowing, so like it can help him like kind of move the rocks and stuff aside. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What I love is also that when
Rippling.
that he's also, that spear tip when they go out of Khuresh as well, of like, you think you're safe because you've got walls and stuff, but the Naga can come up from beneath you, and like this thing could burst on the ground, and then more soldiers and stuff are coming out after it, following through its tunnels, which is pretty nightmarish and great.
I think the confidence in breeding and be good against the Skaven as well, because there's so many warpstone deposits in Khuresh.
Yeah, the Skaven would be like, this is pure nightmare fuel for Skaven.
Now I want to watch Tremors again.
Squirt the Musk of Fear! Run!
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Next up, the Soma Mind Creeper.
Holy
the,
shit.
Yeah. The spellcaster, support buffer, debuffer missile monster. So this thing is basically what happens when the Naga work together with the Skaven to create a weapon. So it's basically from a cast of Naga, a cast of Snakemen that was originally just a aquatic one. They're very atrophied, but they're very intelligent. They have like telepathic abilities. They live in the berets and the water courses of Khuresh. And then there was an issue where they would be mostly a unit confined within Khuresh that only appears when people threaten the Naga sanctums themselves. So they were thinking, okay, how are we going to transport these creatures onto the battlefield, maybe to other places outside of Khuresh, and then attack them with their abilities? So the idea was that they worked together with Skaven clan Scryer and Molder under duress and a lot of warpstone to create this basically a UFO abomination that floats around the battlefield, sending warp lightning and other abilities. And kind of sending telepathic signals to their own Naga Queen about like certain things happening around the battlefield and kind of advising them as the battle goes around and all that. So yeah,
I remember.
I love there's just a
originally-
bunch of horrifying people just hanging from it. Like there's just corpses hanging off the sides.
yeah, they use as a fuel source.
Basically,
it's
yeah.
awesome.
I remember originally this was actually supposed to be another like artillery piece, like on wheels and stuff, and then I was just like, what if I just made it like a UFO? Like, what if I just like because it is like the most like eldritch, like the most like arcane, like sort of artillery piece, right? I was like, just make it float, just have it fly. Like, why? It can sustain itself. And like my thought for like all the bodies like hanging off it was like they're like those would be like wizards, like the local Khuresh humans, where they have like they capture like any of them that might have, like,
magic sensitive
potential-
ones. Yeah,
yeah,
Oh,
magic
that's
sensitive
so
ones.
cool. So they're like
And then-
they're like suppressing magic users among the humans. That's
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it highlights their power as well. Like they're so powerful to the point that they can fight leverages. And also puts with a snake in a jar. Sort of Warhammer thing all through stuff. So
Yeah, it reminds me a lot actually of like the descriptions of like how the Emperor from 40k survives with the Psychers being sacrificed to keep the Golden Throne going. It's like kind of that idea, but in Warhammer Fantasy lens, where these wizards are being hooked up to this horrible machine so it can keep floating around and doing awful stuff.
Mm-hmm. So we didn't want to just put any snake into it, so we picked one of the most strangest looking snakes, the tentacle snake from Southeast Asia, and a completely aquatic snake, and we put them in the jar, and it's kind of based off the snake wine from Indochina and Okinawa. So yeah.
I also like remixed it with a little of like what's that Tyranid from 40k what's the telepathic one?
Zonafro.
Malanfro?
Yeah, Storm. Yeah,
the
the Zonafro.
Zoanthro.
Yeah.
That's
So,
it.
like
Big
with
head.
like
yeah.
The one that like with that silhouette where it's sort of like it's a very like it's like that xenomorph very elongated neck, and then like that like sort of like ridged like back that sort of like pushes like in a really nice and grotesque way.
Well, its body is terrifying looking. Like it's
it really is.
weirdly skinny, and you can see like little tentacles and things coming off its belly. Like
Mhm.
it's a very not wholesome looking creature.
I have a full model of that on my PC. I am sculpted that myself. So yeah, I have a full model of that thing. You wanna 40k? You wanna talk about how like sort of like where the liquid inside the jar comes from?
Oh no.
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be like a congealed form of like warp stone mixed with the black goo that they usually use, and it acts like an amniotic fluid kind of thing for them, but it heightens it. Yep.
They also sort of like I remember you telling me about like how they create the soma, and I was like, holy shit, that's the coolest fucking shit. And basically. You want to talk about it, or do you? Want,
you go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, they they don't like the lizard men, so they take slan and melt it down into goo to create their own sort of like just like a pool of like melted slan of just incredible magic potential, and then immerse like the baby somas within them to like sort of incubate these extremely magically powerful, just like abominations.
Brilliant.
Awful, terrible, rare, and amazing.
Yeah, it's like mind over matter, pretty much. I mean, if you've ever played like Command & Conquer: Yuri's Revenge, like any like the mastermind units, I think it's literally
the mastermind tank.
Gigantic brain. So stuff like that there.
Awesome.
All right. Next up, we have the Needlewing Serpentflies, drawn by FuriousMing.
No.
These are the paralysis-inducing flying war beasts of the Khureshi. You have to have insects in Southeast Asia, so they're kind of an experiment gone wrong. They were originally just kind of created to kind of do the work of aerial harassers, and then they adapted to the ecosystem a bit too much, and then they killed off most of the local flying creatures, but then not all of them. And then a bunch of the different Magas had to work together to kind of stem them, and then they turned them into like.
That's so good. That's so good. I love. I didn't even occur to me, but I love the idea that you take here where the Naga create something and it has the deep unintentional consequences of just fucking the ecosystem. Where there used to be all these other flying creatures, but the Naga unleashed something they actually didn't control that well, and it just destroyed the flying ecosystem. That is so good.
Yes, and they noticed that it had a very big adverse effect on the human population that they use as food, essentially. So they just kind of like put a stop to that. They come from one particular Maga in the south that's kind of like insectoid, which I will reveal in a later date. So the thing with these is that the Naga kind of got them in as attack pets, and then they also use them as like a living security system in certain choke points in jungle crossings and chasms. And then they also use them as a producer of this thing called flesh nectar, produced from the gore of their devoured prey. They build these apiary. Usually it's like it's formed in their nests, but the Naga will specifically make apiaries, like how people keep bees. Or in Southeast Asia, they have like swiftlet nests. They have buildings that they build specifically to house swiftlet populations inside. And then people go in and then they collect the nests out. And then they sell it to like Chinese buyers. So they have these apiaries, and then they go in, they sacrifice people into it, or the needle serpent flies just fly in and they drop them in. And then they produce this basically like a slurry that heightens their regenerative aspects or their fighting skills, or just basically serving as kind of like a drug for them. Yeah.
Flesh and nectar are two words that you never want to hear put together, really.
Yeah, agreed. It's beautifully horrific. I love
Followed immediately by meat honey.
Honey.
Yes. So the inspiration comes from the snake fly and the giant Chinese Dotson fly. The meat honey is actually a thing that's produced from vulture bees. These are actually from South America. They're not from Southeast Asia, but we apply them to it. And yeah, that is exactly what the real life nests look like. And they say that when you taste this, and the vulture bees make these out of like carrion. Like they actually collect, they're stingless. They collect meat out of carrion and they bring it to the nest, and they create this sort of like honey that apparently tastes. They say it tastes like bacon. Some people in there.
No, this is the worst. I adore it, but holy crap!
How big are the needlewing serpent flies?
These are, as you can see, in this artwork that they are carrying some people.
Carrying people? Oh no!
Yeah.
There's people in the
They're basically like Felbat size.
They're people size.
No.
They kind of Felbat size. They impale you and then they paralyze you and then they just take you to their nests. Yeah.
Love it.
So they're kind of like the Naga equivalent of the plague drones, I suppose.
Oh. Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Yeah, really. Jeez, good lord.
Goodness. More.
Yeah. Next, we have the not as creepy and not as disgusting Jacula soaring serpents. These are the flying snakes.
Do they fly? Sweet. Do they fly the same way, like say fish or snakes can swim through the water?
So we base these on the paradise flying snakes from Southeast Asia, the actual gliding snakes. And
there are actual snakes that fly. I forget.
Yeah, the gliding snakes. So I told Ming, like, okay, we designed this thing without wings because there is a sort of flying snake in mythology called an amphithearing. Yeah, but instead we thought, okay, what would be cool is that we design a flying snake and then it has like this weird skin flap thing on the bottom that undulates with the winds of magic. So they kind of like look for winds of magic flowing around, and then they just launch themselves, and then they travel around Khuresh and when it blows, but then they kind of like they bask in the treetops or in the outcroppings of cliffs and such, and then they just kind of absorb these winds, and then they have like this ability to kind of fly around and glide for a certain period of time. They have these weapons that induce vertigo on people that they hit. Yeah, cursed weapons, the javelins. Yeah.
This one has a special place in my heart because he looks so cute and happy compared to.
I was gonna say, kind of reminds me of Escape. His face is so he's having such a great time.
Yeah, exactly. He's just flying around, just chilling up in the air.
Yeah, and they're mostly like a mercenary cast of snakemen. They'll turn up in almost every army, and then they follow this their Elder Naga Queen on their drifting temples laboratory, drifting around the world and all that. And yeah, that's kind of how the idea is. So they're based off the Paradise Flying Snake. And the name also is like a combination of the Jackalus of European myth, the javelin snake, combined with ular, the Indonesian Malay word for snake. The symbol is their mother Marga, so to speak.
We should probably take a pause to grab our next. Holy shit! No, well, I want to do that thing, but no, we should probably take a pause to grab on to our super chats and say thanks to everyone.
Donovan says, as a paleo note, the inclusion of terrestrial crocodiles is much appreciated. Good.
Ditto.
Let's show Chris. Rakarth just sent a letter to CA asking to be moved to Khuresh immediately. He's like, get me in there. Donovan, the guy on the Dread Chimer Gong altar reminds me of, the Dew Warrior.
The Dew Warrior.
Ooh, that's a word. Our
Mananangul.
There you go. Mananangul themed harpies. Oh, do you have any Mananangul themed harpies or spellcasters?
The interesting thing about this is that this is another Filipino mythological creature. It's kind of like the Penanggalan, the Krasab, the head, the flying head with the intestines and all that. The difference is that this one usually bisects itself instead of it's just a head. It bisects itself, and then it has wings, and it has like its trailing thing. So it actually looks more like a Morgul with wings flying around. So there's an idea that I'm kind of playing with later on, and more like a lore thing, that they have like specialized versions of them scattered around. But yeah, that's definitely something I'm kind of looking into.
Very cool.
Good idea.
Man, did you consider the Chinthi as a unit, or were they too similar to the Guardian Lions of Cathay, in your opinion?
The Burmese Guardian Lion. Yes, we did. There's actually also like a Burmese Sphinx that I was also considering, but because we wanted to focus more on the snake aspects for the main army for it, there is actually a sub-faction unit that is kind of like a synth, although mixed with the Kating Vor of Vietnamese myth. That's in the one of the other sub-factions that will be revealed in the future. But yeah, we generally kind of wanted to preserve the design uniqueness, distinctiveness between, say, Cathay and Khuresh, and maybe even also use some lions, for that thing too.
Yeah, makes sense.
That makes sense. The Macrofang Launcher also reminds me of Yali and Gajashima, or Simha, which are similar creatures, also in part elephant, though they're less nautical themed.
Yeah, the lion tiger. Yeah, that's kind of like a bit of inspiration from that too, but primarily the Makara. Yeah.
Sign of the Emperor, like the ice worm from Subnautica Below Zero. Oh, I think when we were talking about like Snake Monster.
The hot knife through butter kind of thing. Yeah.
Donovan, for the animations of the Snakeman Infantry. Okay, so this is actually a good question for our modder. For the animations of Snakemen, if you've gotten to that part yet, did you reuse animation skeletons and Necropolis Knights and Sepulchral Stalkers, or did you do something else?
Cole, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we started with the skeleton the Sepulchral Stalkers use, and we use as a base the animation for the tail to not have to like redo all of that part. And from the torso to the head and all the arms, I did all new animations that will combine with the existing ones for the tail, basically. So the idea, at least for the Rambo Snakeman. And for the spear and shield ones, like the Sarpa warriors, when they will have, the Sepulchral Stalkers already use the spears, but they need an animation new for holding shield up or striking with it. So that's what we are talking at the moment.
I will say, you're dealing with not just a modder, but like a god tier modder when they use words like, oh yeah, I'm like working on unique animations, or instead of just taking a similar unit and just straight copy pasting, which is fine. Like that's a totally valid strategy, but going, no, we're going to go like extra miles. That is nuts. Are there any sea snake naga? I believe the answer is yes.
Yes.
Let's start Chris. Boy, Lee Dao has the crappiest job having to deal with all this garbage. Respect to the fire dragon.
True
explains
fact.
why he's so mad all the time. Donovan, sorry I missed it, but the snake men have heat-sensitive pits that some snakes have. Also, is it bad that meat honey made me think, forget honey roast ham, now we have ham-tasting honey? Ew.
Yes, it's bad.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do have heat-seeking pits. Yeah, they do.
Awesome. All right, carry on.
All right. Next up, we have the final aerial unit, the Vimanaga War Glider, the flying war machine and aerial troop carrier of the Khureshi. Very rarely seen, used by the Jacala as a fighting platform in big campaigns. Snakes on a plane.
Snakes on a plane.
Snakes on a plane, sold.
You guys wanted an AC-130 in Warhammer? We have it now.
Yeah.
Holy
So
crap.
this was a bit of a controversial one when we first released it on Reddit, because it's basically a ramshackle jury rig thing, flying craft of scavenge, old one tech, and flesh sacrifice and dark magic. They have like a center core area you can see that's glowing there. That's actually based off if anyone watched Event Horizon, they have this core that spins in it.
Yep.
Yep. It's kind of based on that. And then they feed sacrifices to this thing to keep it sedated, because otherwise it'll actually start attacking other snakemen too if it's not properly
That's so
taken
great.
care of.
That's awesome.
So the tech is... I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, it's literally got like a demon bound into it. Like, it has a little... If you look in, there's a little face on the front there. It is very malevolent.
Mm-hmm. So it even has like you can see the ribs on the bottom. It has like these basically alchemical bombs that will launch down as it passes by. Yeah, and then the tech is kind of like based off some of, you know how the Lizardmen Temple City, some of them they float, and then there was like and then so it's based off as the name suggests, it's based off the Vimana of Indian mythology. Although instead of like this pyramid structure, we kind of aim for like something more sinuous, so silhouette looks more like a Malay Wow and the Thai Wow Tanu. This is props to RY for making it.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely adore it. I love that you're seeing the perversion of Old One tech in this, which is something that is surprisingly rare in Warhammer. It's super duper duper rare to see Old One tech get brought out, but like corrupted by a force that's messing with it.
And it's nice to see that reflected, because it's something that should definitely occur.
For sure. You can also see, once again, like just like people being strung up as like sacrifices as burned as fuel.
Great.
Yeah, and this is warp stone.
That's great. Yep.
Yeah. Even when you're doing like a genuine mechanical construct, it still has all these extreme biological functions, which is awesome.
Yep. Thematically on point.
So the final unit of Khuresh, the Sesha Mirrored Leviathan, the etheric elemental monster, the strongest set piece monster that they have. This one is basically, it has a vortex that deranges magic. It can become incorporeal. It self-heals. It has multiple bounce spells. It actually has laser blast, completely animated by Ko in-game. Yes. Credits to Flimp for the unit card and Finn for the in-game. Yeah. So thank you, RY, for designing this, and thank you, Ko, for putting it in game.
Good. God, man, I love the idea of the Naga going up against the goddamn Dark Elves, and Dark Elves being like, haha, send forth the Hydras, and the Khuresh are like, no, that's not a Hydra. This is a Hydra.
I've seen you play Hydra Spoony before.
Yeah. So the design is based off, again, the King Cobra, combined with the Ananta Shesha and the Mukalinda and the multi-headed Fire Nak you see in Thailand. Usually this is the protective Naga, but we decided that it kind of serves multiple purposes, most of the time defensive, and sometimes it's offensive. All of the Naga factions can use it, even the Law Line one, for some strange reason that will be divulged later on. But yeah, that's the base of it.
It's meant to be like very sort of crystalline, essentially. It's like sort of like milky crystal. Like, obviously, this would be really hard to do like up close in the game, but like, you know, like I imagine it's very much like if you get up close to it, you look into it, it's like all tiny little crystal facets, and it's just like reflections inside. That's what I see. It's like sort of like an like very like it looks like a giant serpent. When you get up close, the more eldritch it looks. It's my intention if you actually get up close and look at it.
So you said this is a etheric entity. So is this summoned by
it's
the
summoned.
Khuresh on the battlefields? Okay.
Yep. It's like a greater demon of
a divine servant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like the what do they call the Skaven?
Yeah, the Vermin Lord.
The Vermin
Lord.
Yeah.
So that's it for now. That's the unit list.
Wow.
It's a fucking phenomenal unit list. I love that. I'll say the thing that I really, really love, and we saw a number of comments that kind of asked about this, but I really kind of want to dial in on for a second, that I think when it comes to designing like a brand new faction from scratch, like something like the Naga, one of the most difficult things is not what to include, but what not to include. You want to try and land on a theme and stay true to a theme of like, okay, we're doing the Naga of Khuresh, but I think a lot of people would understandably sort of jump the gun of, oh, I'm just going to take every possible thing I can think of from Southeastern mythology and stuff like that and just cram it all in, whether or not it like makes any sense or whether it looks like it fits. But I really want to give you all massive applause on, even when you do put something in, making sure to adjust it, tweak it, alter it, Warhammerify it, so to speak, so that it fits with the Naga, instead of just sort of like, because that's something I often see, that it's kind of like a I appreciate people's passions, but it's like you gotta pull back a little bit. They'll kind of just take their favorite monsters or creatures and just sort of throw them in willy-nilly without doing anything to them.
I think like adding a chicken tut to Kislev and just making it Baba Yaga.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just making
without any thought as to what would make for a unique Warhammer creature. They just go copy/paste.
So I just want to give y'all massive applause. So like you can see all the inspirations, but they're all genuinely unique interpretations.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't need to say all of that because Sotek now has. Thanks, Sotek. Appreciated.
Yep.
And I think, broadly speaking, I agree. I've seen a lot in my time of various fan projects, some good, some bad, some in between. But this one seems to have a level of focus and thematic certainty that so many I've seen in the past haven't had. Particularly when you're dealing with a project where there are multiple people involved. Often with fan projects, they tend to fall apart, because fan projects do. But because there's multiple people involved, they often go in different directions with each other, and then they have a slight bicker as to exactly where things should land. And there seems to be a strong thematic understanding of every choice made for each one of these units. Every time you've gone outside of perhaps the wheelhouse of what you might expect for Snake Men, you've then gone, well, let's now take that thing that's outside and repurpose it so it definitely matches everything else that we're doing. We're taking this floating pyramid thing and we're making a B-52 Snake on a plane. Freaking love it. And each time ensuring that the theme is always remembered, and ensuring that when you're looking at your inspirational sources, that they definitely have that snake sitting behind it all. And it's really nice to see, because I've seen it go wrong so many times, and it's not that, it's just gorgeous. Big happy smiles on my face. Every time when you think him up, I was like, that's horrific. Woohoo! Yay!
Thank you, Andy.
It's great. I love it. Yeah, I actually love it. I would be happy porting sections of that into my game, for example. Not that my game's anywhere near that part of the world, but nevertheless, I like to imagine that on the other side of the world there's all manner of snaky horror going on that would just make anybody feel pretty sick. Love it.
Just grab a filed one and have it spring out and players out of nowhere. Be like, what the hell is that?
Have it show up, explain nothing, just leave them with that.
Yeah, it's been an immensely enjoyable, I don't want to call it a presentation because it makes it sound like it's something formal, but nevertheless, it's been an immensely enjoyable showcase. That's a good word. Showing not just the potential of what you've got, but the actual execution of what you've got. It's not just a bunch of ideas loosely put together, it's a complete thematically strong faction that just makes me smile.
Okay, I'm going to grab some more Super Chat stuff that came in real fast, and then we will get to the final little bits here. Sarah the Emperor says, Liddell has to deal with all of this, plus whatever End has on top of the Monkey King being a thorn in his side at least half the time. He truly is the Perturabo of the Dragon family.
Yeah. Thinking the same.
Captain Magma, could the Snake Men have anything to do with the time of darkness and disharmony in Grand Cathay? Perhaps they have something to do with the Emperor and Empress's disappearances. Or maybe, perhaps they pulled some strings alongside Clan Eshin or with Clan Eshin to inspire the Monkey King to attack Grand Cathay like he did during the time of Darkness and Disharmony.
Yeah, there's actually a part in the lore that we haven't revealed yet where they are actually involved with the Time of Darkness and Disharmony.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that really should be, I mean, and we're all hoping we're going to see this with Grand Cathay now officially coming down the pipeline for the old world very, very quickly. I really hope it's like basically the Storm of Chaos over there. But we'll have to see. Dawman, have you written any lore of Khuresh attacking the gates of Caliph?
Yes, it's actually part of it is actually in the background that will be expanded upon later on, because it's right on the border of one of the Margas, and it's one of the places where the Khureshi can they get consistently resisted, and it sits on this ley line, this waystone, so it's
Excellent.
a bit of a thing.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Everybody loves an opportunity to kick in some elves. It's always great. Darman, the Seshai reminds me a lot of the Total War Saga Troy version of the Hydra, but it's much more awesome because it has lasers. Cole Patterson, you've inflicted me with some new emotion where my mouth is smiling, but my eyes are full of fear. Okay. But I don't ever want to meet any of you people. Hound said, such a mirrored Leviathan equals the biblically accurate snake. Yeah. All right, let's go into the final couple slides here.
All right. So the final part is the teaser for the future. What do you expect to, what you can expect to see in the future? Yes, the Ouroboros. So what we're planning, me and Cole, was that this is mostly his idea, that we'll have as a preview for the mod, the spin-off mod for Total War Warhammer, there's going to be a kind of smaller downloadable mod that allows destruction aligned and unscrupulous factions to kind of summon in mercenary units from the Khuresh army list, mostly based on when you know how there's like unusual locations will just randomly spawn in game sometimes, and sometimes you'll be in like, so in this case you'll be like in Sylvania, for example, and then sometimes the unusual location will spawn, which is a serpent cult, and then you can kind of upgrade it and build upon it, and it'll come with various melodies, but also a lot of benefits, and you can summon in the some units of the Khuresh army list, and then eventually you get to like Dread Maws. So yeah,
fantastic.
And then, and in the future we'll have a new website. We're no longer reliant on just World Anvil, but we will still update World Anvil as we go along for the main Khuresh project hub. This will be where all of the army list, the sub-faction list, the legendary lords, and the other characters, the full list of all of the realms and all of the landscapes, and my art for that one will be. We have a map that I've actually already drawn for Khuresh with my wife. That's also going to be on this main website. Yeah, there'll be the spells for the Lord of the Blood Naga, and then there's going to be a list of the items and ancillaries. Yeah, and a little teaser for the future. This is the first reveal of the fan project map with the legend that I did for Khuresh. Basically taking the various historical nations of Southeast Asia and kind of combining them and fiddling with them to form the various realms of the Blood Naga.
So
and
I obviously, I'm just because I can't comment. I've done a lot of maps for Games Workshop over time. I was the cartographer for a whole chunk of things. If you want to make it look very much like the current stuff and very Warhammery, I do recommend taking a look at their current map for Old World, because the style is so simple that it's exceedingly easy to replicate it. The little Nippon project that we've got in the background, I did a map that basically is identical to the ones that they've done already. It doesn't look like Games Workshop's map because it's got, completely different styles of heraldry because it's Japanese based rather than whatever else is based. But it gives it a flavor that classic digitally made maps just kind of don't. And it makes it feel dead Warhammer-y, and it is super, super easy if you want to do it. I was a little bit appalled at how easy it was to do, largely because It's as go look at the mountains and go look how badly the rivers are drawn. Go look how badly the various parts are drawn. The symbols they use, super high res, super artistic, but the actual map itself is a bad word. Look at how simply, perhaps would be a better way of putting it, it's drawn. Often their inking in is outside the lines, but when you zoom out, it looks amazing. So if you do want something that when they see it, everyone will go, well, that's Warhammer. It's a super easy way to do it.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
That's a small aside. It's also quite a fun thing to do.
We'll say it's absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot of really fun things going on there. I assume you will post this somewhere where people can look at it more closely in the near future.
Yes. Yes, I'll post it.
I have two questions. Number one, where would you advise everybody goes to go look at all this cool awesomeness themselves? And number two, if there's anybody out there who would like to support you, is there any way to do so? Because who doesn't like to be supported?
Mm-hmm. So for the first point, right now we are only really in the Total War subreddit posts and the World Anvil site. In the future, not too long in the future, I hope, I will release the link to the Khuresh Fan Project website itself, and then that's where the entire project will be centered on. As for supporting the team, well, right now for the Total War Warhammer 3 aspect, we still need a lot of help on the modding side, especially on Co. So yeah, any more help on that front would be really appreciated, because making something this big.
So
otherwise, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Otherwise, the best way to support is just spread the word. Tell other people about it. Let people know.
So what I'll say is that for anyone out in the audience who is a modder and would want to chat with y'all to potentially get brought on for the team to help Co out with bringing the Naga of Khuresh to life in Total War Warhammer, which is insane that I'm saying that. Like, the fact that y'all are this far into your project is bonkers. Who should they go talk to / where's the best place for them to go to get in contact with you guys?
Usually on Discord, in the modding den, or the Skeleton Crew site. You can just talk directly to Co most of the time. Is that okay, Co?
Yeah, for sure. All help is welcome, and if people want to reach out and talk about it, or ask questions, or offer help, I'm more than happy to answer and collaborate with them.
Great. I've
got one other thing to say in that one as well. So if you happen to come back at this at a later date, if you're watching on YouTube, for example, there's going to be links sitting inside the description underneath YouTube. In fact, they're there right now if you're watching on YouTube, where you can go find the various ArtStation accounts and the World Anvil accounts and all the rest. But if you can't find them and you desperately want to help because you think this project is as cool as I think it is, then pop into the LAWhammer Discord, which I assume you're already in. Just ask there, and we will ask and point you in the right direction from there. So if you are lost, go jump into one of our Discords, and we will point you into the right direction.
Yeah, we'll do the same thing in the Lore Seekers Chamber. If you're in my Discord, feel free to just reach out and say, "Hey, I'm looking for the Khuresh guys," and we'll get you sorted. Damn straight.
Because who wouldn't love to see all these sneaky boys wander around snecking everyone in the most horrendous fashion? It would just be amazing. And obviously, the more help that they have, the better a chance we have of seeing this turned into something you can all actually play. And the last thing is, of course, while there's, of course, the bullet that needs to be dodged of financially supporting this particular project due to licenses and stuff, you can absolutely chat with any of these gentlemen for their various roles and commission them to do all sorts of other projects if they're open for doing commissions, which check their stuff.
I also have a Patreon, I guess, but
Hey,
that's
Patreons!
great. Excellent. Yeah,
excellent. Go check them out. Patreon. Where's your Patreon?
I mean, it's Brody Art. I am under the same name everywhere.
Excellent. That should be super easy to find. In fact, if I don't have a link to that already, I will go grab that and slap that into the video description as well.
I think that's a good thing to do real quick. From just kind of like top down, if you have anywhere where people can find and support your project. Well, I guess we'll put that in the description. That way we're not just.
I'll drop it in.
It'll be in the description.
Totally, because you should obviously go and support the patrons if they have one immediately, because everybody likes money. It keeps us going.
Last couple of super chats that came in here. Looks like Chris said, I would laugh at the backflips the advisor would have to make to work for your legendary lords. I mean, if he can get in with fucking Starbrand, he can get in with anybody.
Greenskins. Holy crap! Yeah.
Did I hear someone mention kick in the L's? Yes,
You
it's a
did.
time-honored tradition. Karza, Khorne. Oh, this is a great question. I seem to have noticed that Khorne seems excluded from the Naga observed gods. Is there any reason why the Blood God is not there?
Actually, he is in, but that's kind of like wrapped up in the main faction that will be revealed in the future. Yeah.
Cool.
There you go.
There's a particular legendary hero with 47 years. I would love to see that one shown, but not yet. Not yet.
Very cool. Captain Magma, y'all should look at the Skaven Clans mod by the Skeleton Crew. They have Slanesh and Corn Rats. Duly noted.
Sure.
All right.
Why not?
And that kind of
Have we
brings
reached
us
the end
almost
already? Holy cremolians, that went
pretty much
fast.
exactly on time.
That was unbelievable. So first, I'd like to offer an enormous thanks to the entire team behind the Khuresh Fan Project. Not only have they come along and very eloquently displayed some of the most awesome stuff we have ever seen, that is, for now, everything that we have, but we have also been offered an absolute wealth of extraordinary art, even an animation or two, and of course there's also music to come as well. It's astonishing. I am beyond impressed with everything they have, and also just really happy to have met them all. They're just great.
Thanks for having us. It was awesome chatting with you guys, and actually talking to the team. Looking
person?
remember in person, not even in person, but like at least for
Yeah,
the first time.
close enough. Close enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost in person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
this-
cannot thank y'all enough again for coming on to do this on Lorebeards. We greatly appreciate y'all taking your time out of your schedules and everyone figuring out a time when we could get
Well, we could get it
practically
all working.
the most bizarre mix of time zones to all meet up. This was a huge privilege and super duper awesome to see. We will very much hopefully have them back in the future when they're ready to show off the next wave of insanity. Which
second
will be
episode.
super duper
Yeah.
exciting. So that will almost assuredly happen in the future, assuming me and Andy don't blow up somewhere. And they better hope not.
Games Workshop's coming to drag us out right now.
But
Love it.
who knows where this will go? And you know, the biggest hope is that maybe one day Games Workshop would be open to CA being open to reaching out to these guys and adapting some of their ideas, or you know, in the true unfortunate reality of Games Workshop, some GW writer looking over and going, I bet I could steal that.
Hey, at least then people would
That's
know.
never happened before.
Yeah. But that is it for Lorebeards today. Thank you all so much for making the time to come join us. We will be back this Wednesday with something that I realized I was supposed to have talked to Andy about before today, but whatever, I'll talk to him afterwards. And
Professional as always.
yeah, and we'll be back next Sunday with Famir.
Yeah,
which
for
will
me
be
next Sunday. That'll be fun.
Yep. So if you're like, oh man, I want to hear about, instead of abandoned children of the old ones, natives that got fucked over by the old ones, we got a show for you. So we'll see y'all next week.
See you then. Bye-bye.